going on, Rotogrinders? Dean here at Dean 7904. If you want to get all technical on me, it is 10:30 on the dot on the East Coast, 7:30 West Coast, 8:30 Mountain Time. Grant's time not available for us. Grant's not here for whatever reason. Hopefully he's all good. Blender stepping up in his stead. It's the flagship show here. It's called Grinderslive. We're here for the next 2.5 hours. Not us specifically, but the crew will be replaced at some point. But taking you guys all the way up the lock, answering your questions, breaking down Week 14. We're heading down the quarter pole here, Blender. Thanks for joining us. And our heated conversation, not heated. We had a conversation pre-show, all three of us, Andre as well, and. I was just saying that this slate's kind of garbage. It's not fun. I'm not enjoying it. I don't like making lineups this slate. I'm playing. I'm having at it. I put the research in and all that kind of stuff, but I am not liking what's coming up on my screen. And you, I think you live for this stuff. You like this. The uglier the better. So it's kind of it's a sloppy track to stick on that quarter pole metaphor. Yeah, you feel good about this slate today? You like it?
I think today's slate is a lot more clear cut than we see most slates. I mean, we have games that are clearly above all the others, and we have a ton of games. We have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of the 11 games on this slate have a 44 or lower total. So from my perspective, the stack wise, from a stacks perspective, it seems as if it's condensed. Like I don't. It's not one of these slates where it's like, oh, I feel like I could play 8 different stacks. It's like, no, it's really kind of like 4 or 5, maybe 6, something like that. And really, I'm really targeting the players from those games. And then all these other lower total games, you could play one-offs and running backs, maybe stuff like that. But I think it's a much more clear cut. The problem is that because of the salaries, running back value is going to be better than wide receiver value on this slate. So there's a bunch of running backs that you can play, and wide receiver is going to be very condensed ownership wise. And I think there are ways to play that differently. You're playing different players on the game environments that you're targeting, and there's multiple different combinations that you can make. So I don't feel like this is a disgusting slate at all. You may have to play 1 or 2 disgusting players in your lineup, but you don't have to play 5 of them. So like if you don't want to play Jamison Crowder, Hunter Renfrow, and Jarvis Landry in your wide receiver slots, that's the A dot of 4, and they all run a 40 in like 5 seconds. Like you don't have to play all 3, but you may be playing one of them.
Yeah, the other part of that is you're doing that to get in players that aren't necessarily perfect, and they're kind of sort of overpriced as well. One of those games, by the way, with a total under 44 is a game that Andre will be attending, the Jet game. 42.5, be precise there, rocking those. I think you're a Saints fan, correct?
Yes, I am.
So, yeah, I guess you like yourself some Kamara. One of the big questions in this slate, we'll kind of dive in, and Andre, hopefully things are all well in your world, and I should have asked how you're doing, but yeah, the Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, you can run against the Jets. Obviously, Taysom's going to siphon some potential goal line touches, just running it himself. And can you play Taysom and Kamara in the same lineup? Is one of the kind of the quandaries I've been kind of staring at throughout the day. And it's like, I guess you can throw a touchdown to him, and I guess both can kind of get there. You factor in the condensed. That's kind of how they're going to move the ball today, and they're facing the Jets. But yeah, give me your thoughts as far as this slate, and then sure, answer that question by all means. So Hill and Kamara in the same lineup. Can we do that?
Yes, I'm actually doing that today. I like it today personally, just because the Jets are so bad defensively at rushing the ball. I mean, stopping the run. They both could get there and have 100 yards rushing. So and at that point they'll get to their floor. And then all Alvin does have to do is maybe catch a couple balls out the backfield, because he doesn't even have I think we don't have Smith today, as far as the receiver wise. So, and we're pretty much missing all of our running backs because of COVID protocols and being on the list. So I think Kamara is going to be relied on a little bit more heavily than we have seen in the past. So I think we have to kind of not get used to what it was last year when it was when he wasn't targeting him a lot. But I think also because Michael Thomas was there last year too in the offense. So I think that took away from some of Kamara's targets when it came to Taysom Hill, because Taysom Hill probably was looking more downfield towards Michael Thomas. But I think he'll use Kamara a lot today, and I think they'll mix it up a lot. So to me, I like getting to him today. I like having both of them in my lineups today. I know it's unorthodox and not a lot of people going to have it, but that allows you to get a lot of the plays and then even have other little like mini stacks of other games that you might like a lot of, especially if they get to like their median projection or exceed it for sure. And I think the slate is not a bad slate. It is a little different, but I like the plays that are here today. A difficult slate makes for a good one, and I think we can find some ways to win a lot of money today.
Sounds like the dog's like in the background too. Is that plural or is that just one dog? How many dogs are going on?
That's one dog. That's my she's a Pomsky. She's just wants attention. That's what she is.
She's fired up about the Saints today. Blender, since you threw it out there, you might as well answer that question as well too. I'm curious what your thoughts on that. It's certainly possible that both Kamara and Hill hit the 100-yard bonus in the ground. Like that's something you don't really see very often, but I think that's at least in play.
I mean, it's in play. I'm not doing it. In fact, I'm building 18 GPP lineups. Taysom Hill will be in my cash lineup on DraftKings, but I will have no Saints in I will not be playing Taysom Hill. I'm not be playing Alvin Kamara. I may even be playing the Jets defense because of Taysom Hill's mallet finger. That's my favorite injury. Mallet finger. What does it look like? Is it flat or something? Does it have like a little hammer at the end? I have no idea. I think in GPP's
my favorite injury is ankles. I like when it was not singular, just ankles. I can't remember what ankles. I think it was Wentz at ankles. But go ahead.
I just think Taysom Hill is going to be wildly overowned in GPPs. So if he's going to be wildly overowned in a game that is one of the lower totals, they're playing in New York. They're not even playing in the dome down in New Orleans. Like I'm willing to, and if you play Taysom Hill, who you pairing him with, you could play him naked, whatever. I just think he's going to be too overowned. I don't want to pair him up with any of the wide receiver options. I don't want to pair him with Juwan Johnson or something at tight end. So if New Orleans beats me, they beat me, but I don't think that's necessarily the best game environment. So I'm perfectly fine in 18 lineups not having any of it.
I don't think like the Jets at 3K on Fanduel aren't the worst idea. Not that you need to like beg for salary in Fanduel, but it's just a way to kind of like full flat out punt the defense. And so I don't hate that. On DK, it's a little bit more of a squeeze as far as a salary cap, and Yahoo is somewhere in the middle. Yeah, well, give me some quarterbacks you actually are playing, Blender. And let me just take a peek here at the lineup HQ. And obviously, like you referenced, you talked about as far as your cash game quarterback specifically on DK, it'll be Taysom Hill. It's got to make stuff work. 5.6K, super cheap price. Like we said, positive matchup there as well. We're looking at 15% ownership and a big dip to Josh Allen. Josh Allen at 10.4%. Then Newton, which is kind of in that Hill conversation, I suppose, running quarterback at this point. I can't imagine they want Newton to throw more than 25 times. Same deal with Hill. I would assume, like if all things go well. Then Herbert, then Brady, then Mahomes, then Dak versus Washington. Give me the quarterbacks you are playing, Blender.
You just named them.
That's
Allen, Herbert, Prescott, Mahomes, Wilson. I'll take a shot on a Seattle stack. I mean, it won't be probably maybe only in maybe 2 out of my 18 lineups, but I'm really just I'm targeting the game environment. I mean, there's clear game environments that are better than others, and pairing. I think the only sneaky possibility that you could take a shot on. I don't believe I'm going to do this, but he's the last quarterback on my cut list. Would be Cam Newton. Everyone's playing Taysom Hill. You play Cam Newton, you pair him with DJ Moore, you single stack that. You don't even have to bring anyone back on Atlanta if you don't want. And I think the disparity between Hill and Newton, the Falcons defense is awful also. So, I mean, like the Falcons defense sucks. The Jets defense sucks. Is there any reason? I mean, the projection in my aggregate, Hill projects for 2 points higher median, but 2 points shouldn't result in one quarterback being twice as owned as the other one. So I can understand if you want to go cheap to do Cam Newton. I could also understand if you want to play the opposite side of the Dallas game, Taylor Heineke. You pair him with, a McLaurin, Ricky Seals-Jones. I think that's good leverage off of Antonio Gibson because Gibson is going to be chalk. And the same thing with Dak when it comes to, I think the biggest thing for today's slate, the biggest person that matters is Zeke Elliott. Because I'm not sure.
I'm told he's dusty. Is he not dusty? Or how dusty is he and how dusty is
the problem is that if Pollard doesn't play, like who else are they giving the ball to?
Yeah. Is it Clement? No. Zeke's going to get the ball. Like, that's it.
Right. As long as he doesn't get injured, he's going to get the ball. And you could pretty much say the same thing for Jacobs as well. So, like, I know we're not talking about running backs, but, like, if I knew that Zeke was going to be chalk, I love the Prescott stacks, like Lamb, Gallup, Cooper. I still like that anyway, regardless. Playing it on the other side of Gibson, because Gibson will be owned, and then we have these Dallas wide receivers that are going single-digit owned. So I no problem pairing those two together to mitigate the Gibson ownership. But like, if Zeke's going to be under-owned, then like I'd much rather play Zeke than play the pass catchers on the Cowboys. So like, to me, the hardest decision is gauging what the Zeke ownership is going to be, because that's going to determine how much of the Dallas Dak Prescott stacks I have.
Less than 10% on DK, I'll say.
With Zeke?
Really?
Yeah.
Think?
No. He's gonna no. That ownership.
People don't want to play him, man. People don't want to play him. They're gonna be playing.
Once you find out the ownership, though, once you find out from inactives if Pollard's in or out, that ownership's going to change drastically.
Yeah, if Pollard's inactive, it's gonna go up. The question, Dean, is not whether or not it's gonna go up. It's like whether or not it goes up to the efficient level. Like if you tell me that Zeke is going to be 12%, 14% owned, I'm like, he's under owned. If he goes up to 2022, I'd be like, okay, now I'm not. I mean, he's fine. He's fine at that ownership, but just that it's not as. It's like, okay, I could play him, right? If Gibson goes up to 35, he's over owned. If Gibson stays at the 22, 24 range, I think he's fine. What's going to happen with Eckler?
Gibson's going to get a big number. Like Gibson's going to be at least 30%. That's the one people are going to want to play.
Yeah. How about Eckler? We have Eckler also. Like, people were down for playing Eckler this whole week, and now he's at 8,300, and he kind of gets squeezed out. So is his ownership going to go down? This running back ownership is what's going to determine. I know we're talking about quarterbacks. Like, the stacks that I play, like the more that Eckler's owned, the more that I want to play a guy like Jared Cook. But the less Eckler's owned, the more I want to play Eckler and not Cook and play some other tight end. So like all these moving parts work together with one another as far as like leverage in your lineups. So it's not just saying like, who do I want to play as a stack? It's like, well, depending on who I play, I need to play certain running backs that are either over or under or over owned, depending on.
We should say that like McKissick not expected to play. That's why Gibson's going to be super popular there against Dallas. We presume he's going to get passing downs as well. We've seen with the Raiders, that they've kind of lost their passing down receivers as well. So we're going to get Jacobs is going to be more popular. On the comeback, he'll catch like 7 or 8 or 9 passes. Always get those targets. That's what we're expecting. Deebo Samuel expected back there for San Francisco, but as of right now, it looks like it's going to be Wilson's backfield, at least for the one, first down, second down, and then Hasty probably on third downs. That's kind of what we're guessing. At least that's what I'm guessing. And that seems to be the most likely scenario. And Pollard, even if he plays, I can't imagine he plays much. The news does not look very optimistic. I saw somebody throw it out there. He might play special teams, which seems just weird to me. But kind of waiting for the actives and inactives 11:30, obviously for the 1 o'clock games, and 2:45, 2:35, whatever it is, depending on an hour and a half before the late games start. Andre, we'll talk about running backs in a second, but let's knock out quarterbacks. And by the Cam Newton thing's interesting too, because they just fired their offensive coordinator because they were passing the ball too much. And now this sets up as a game where you can run the ball a ton, and Cam can run the ball, sure, but I don't know how much they're going to ask Cam to pass against Atlanta. That's kind of my concern. But if he runs the ball twice for touchdowns, who cares? All right, Andre, quarterbacks. What do you have for me?
Yeah, I'm not that high on Cam this week. Just from that standpoint right there. And plus he might get pulled from the game. I know they did it once, so that those are just some things that concern me. I'll have a little bit of exposure to him, but I'll be under the field on him for sure. But guys I'm looking to get to in tournaments, besides obviously the obvious that we have with Josh Allen and Tom Brady, with that game being the game of the week and where all the fireworks should be at. I do like getting to a guy like Joe Burrow. I know he's playing with a broken pinky, but with the way he's playing, I mean, with the way to beat the San Francisco 49ers is down the field. And Joe Burrow, I know I play him every single week, but he's always in a good spot, and he has good targets that he can throw the ball deep down the field and attack the secondary, which is their weak point. So he's someone I think I'm going to definitely be well over the field on for sure, and try to have a lot more exposure to than everyone else. And hope that game just tends to shoot out a little bit more. And both teams are a little bit bad, and maybe Mixon being hurt. I mean, Mixon being sick might force him to sit out, where they might have to throw the ball a little bit more too. But we'll see what happens. I also do like getting to Justin Herbert today against the Giants. Someone I think he's talked about from what I've been hearing, but not as much. So he's someone I think that obviously has the upside. We know his targets. It's simple. You can play Guyton, you can play Eckler, you can play Williams, or you can play Brandon Cook with him. I mean Jerry Cook. Sorry, those are the only options you can play with them, and that makes it simple to me. And I'm just gonna have different combinations of that, where I'm gonna attack it against the Giants, who have been okay this year, but I think they can be beat. And Justin Herbert is a quarterback that has the talent to do that for sure. And another sneaky GPP guy that I think he should be played a little bit more, but it is kind of a bad. I mean, I understand why people aren't on him like that. Is Teddy Bridgewater going against Detroit? It's Detroit. And a lot of their players on the defensive end and offensive side and coaches are out today because they're sick, and due to COVID as well. So with that being said, to me, Bridgewater could take advantage of this offense. I mean, of this defense, which is missing a lot of bodies. And their offense is also missing a lot of bodies. And I think they can get up big by scoring a couple of touchdowns through the air and then just run the ball out with either Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams. So I think you even go with a little bit of an onslaught there, and that can work out and be fine in tournaments. To me, that's a really good sneaky GPP play that I like for sure. And obviously we can run out here like Patrick Mahomes, which is a good play as well. I just think that his targets with him are too expensive, so it makes it a little bit hard to get to, but to me it's going to be a little bit different. So I would try to get as much as get at least a field if you can on that. And Lamar Jackson, who no one's going to be playing. I know he hasn't been himself lately, but he can always have an upside game at any given slate. And I know he's going to me playing against the Cleveland Browns, I think it's a good bounce back spot for him, potentially.
I think he's one of the most interesting ones, Lamar, because nobody's going to play him. Like you said, he's, as far as the guys nobody's that's playing that has like immense upside, who could be the quarterback one today, it's Lamar, because he's a guy that can break off a 70-yard run. And he also can throw a 70-yard pass too. And he's got easy pairing partners as well. But worth noting, as far as you talk about Burrow, San Francisco, a couple of their secondary pieces are going to be out today. A couple of their starters. So if you like Burrow like a couple of days ago, you like him even more today. Blender, it's week 14. People know that Tom Brady is good and Allen's good and Mahomes, well, he's supposed to be. He's been good one game in those last 4 or 5, and it was against these very Raiders. I don't know what else we could tell people at this point. It's just sort of game theory and lineup construction and all that. But you have anything to add? Of course, Brady should be in your pool if you're running MMA. If you're running, even 10, you're making 18 lineups. I assume you have at least a couple Brady's. Yes, maybe.
He probably will be my highest exposed quarterback.
Yeah,
that game it's as a median value is expected to have 12 to 15 more plays on average than any other game on the slate. So that's what the opportunity is. Both teams pass a lot. So both teams pass a lot. Both teams have good run defenses and poorer pass defenses. The Bills' defense is much worse than it was. Their middle linebacker is out. Tre'Davious White tore his ACL, so he's gone. So the Bucs stopped the run. So how does this game not have a million plays in it? So it seems obvious. It seems everyone's going to go there. Well, not everyone's going. I mean, the ownership on these guys on both sides of the ball are within reason. I mean, Godwin will be a little bit chalky. We'll get, Diggs will be a little bit. I mean, no one is just standing out as overly owned. The quarterbacks aren't either. So they're owned. So people are scared because they're owned. But they're not. I think all the players in this game could be under owned for the game environment that this is in. And this to me, this is the only game on the slate that could go 80 points 44-36 type of game. So to me, it's like, keep it simple, stupid. And I'm just playing a lot of it. Why not?
Yeah, biggest total on the board. Tricky as far as figuring out what the right pairing pieces are, because there's a lot of options. Buffalo, you got Diggs and Sanders and Beasley, even UCF's own Gabriel Davis gets every once in a while gets loose. Tampa Bay, I know they're without Brown, but Gronk, of course, has been smashing for a while now. Evans, Godwin, Perriman played a bunch of snaps. He at least did some exercising last week. If you want to be ambitious, I don't think it's the worst idea in like extreme tournaments. And of course, Fournette has just been awesome as well, too. One of the best running backs in all of football in 2021. Good for him. No one really saw that coming. Buffalo running backs, I don't want any part of that. Oh, Dawson Knox. I didn't mean to knock him out. Of course, he's certainly worth a look. Andre, you got anything else as far as quarterbacks? I think we should probably move on to talk about running backs. More interesting conversation.
Nope, no one else. We're good to go.
Open up the running backs for us. Do you like Alvin Kamara amongst other running backs that are out there today?
Of course, I like Alvin Kamara today against the Jets. So I'm going to be playing probably. I'm fixing my exposures now, so I'm probably getting a little bit more of them than I have before. But like we were talking about before, I'm waiting for inactives because right now I'm already over the field on Zeke Elliott, but I want to find out what happens with that news, because if he's still going to be this low, then I'm definitely going to keep my exposures with him being low. So I like him today a lot. But my favorite running back to get to is Josh Jacobs today, just because I know he's been getting the passing work out of the backfield. I played a lot of him last week, and it worked out for me pretty well. So I'm going to go right back to the well this week and just in roster him for sure. I think also another guy that we should look at, who I'm going to be over the field on, is Leonard Fournette. Obviously, we know he's been playing well, and it's also about a lot of opportunities for him. But if everyone's going to be playing Tom Brady, I want to get some Leonard Fournette exposure and be over the field on him a little bit, just to hedge it, just in case they decide to run the ball and take a playbook out of Bill Belichick, which I doubt they'll really do, but you never know. So he's someone I think we should try to get to for sure. And with Melvin Gordon still being I think Melvin Gordon's going to play today, so I like giving a little bit of Javonte Williams just to be splitting the carries, because his ownership, I think, will drop a little bit because of that, or it should at least, but who knows, just because of the big game, they might still roster him at this ownership we have right now as far as like 16%, but I think Javonte is definitely in play for sure. And Jeff Wilson, I know he's going to be popular today, but personally, I think we should go under the field on him, just because we got just because it's Kyle Shanahan, but also we got Deebo Samuels back, and they will give Deebo Samuels the ball. So since they're going to give him the ball, to me, I'd rather play, which I am going to do today, play a lot more Deebo Samuels today in my wide receiver position than Jeff Wilson, and be under the field on Jeff Wilson. And also Jeff Wilson's dealing with a knee that's not really, so he's not really 100% healthy. And I don't want to take the chance of him coming out of the game on like the first or second play of the game, possibly, just because his knee is not holding up well for him. So he's someone I think I'm going to just try to be well on the field on for sure. I know people are going to play Saquon today. He's a good play. I think, especially with the way that the Chargers funnel to the run a lot more. So I think he's good. He's a good option. And another sneaky play that I do like getting to today is Patterson, Cordell Patterson. And obviously just going against he's the only person pretty much from Atlanta besides maybe Russell Gage I would want to get to in tournaments, just because I know that's where the balls are going to go to majority of the time, and he's going to see a lot of the targets and rushing attempts.
Yeah, you mentioned Jacobs. Drake is on IR. Jalen Richard still in the COVID protocol. My understanding is it's unlikely he'll play today. I'm not sure if that's officially been ruled out, but that's why he's been more unleashed in the passing game. I saw somebody in chat mentioned Peyton Barber. Like, Peyton Barber's just not getting on the field, and he's not even like a pass catcher anyway. Do not play Peyton Barber. I mean, if I lose to Peyton Barber today, good Lord, that's fine. Tip of the cap. We'll move on. What's up, chat? We haven't said hello to chat just yet. Hey, say hello there. Hit the like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, fire off some questions as well. These fine gentlemen will be happy to answer your questions. Well, I don't know how happy Blender will be to answer like this guy or that guy questions, but Andre will for sure. Blender, as far as running backs, yeah, man, I think you guys, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my read is wrong. But Wilson is much better suitable, I think, on Fanduel. On DK, I don't know how much I need him. On Fanduel, I think the price is really, really good at 4.9K. So I'm more likely to play him there than I am on DK. But The Zeke thing, I don't know, Blender. I think most people just are tired of Zeke. But you're right. If Pollard doesn't go,
I'll be very, very not tired of him today. I have no problem. To me, my running back pool is very condensed. I'm getting more different at wide receiver for one-offs than I am for running backs. I mean, really, I'm just sticking to the tried and true. Gibson, Eckler, Jacobs, Elliott, Fournette, Wilson, maybe throw in a little bit of Barkley, a little bit of Patterson, possibly. I could see maybe taking a shot on James Robinson. You got the 2 cheap Detroit Lions running backs. Good luck figuring that out. You got the what is Tennessee going to do? Because you got Hilliard, because McNichols is back. So you got Forman, McNichols, Hilliard. Who knows what happens there? What did the Jets do? You got Ty Johnson at 4,400, but Austin Walter or whatever, this guy off the practice squad is getting snaps. So like I take a look at all those cheap running backs and go, more or less Jeff Wilson like projects. I mean, not that much better, but like I almost think that Deebo Samuel being back helps him because I think it hurts Hasty more than anything. Because Deebo Samuel is not a running back. It's like Curtis Samuel, right? He's actually a receiver. So like if they're going to give work on a passing down, it's going to be Deebo Samuel kind of in the backfield than Hasty and Wilson. Still, they're not running Deebo Samuel up the middle. They're not running trap plays for him. So like the only guy on the roster that runs those types of plays would be Wilson. So like they're not running Hasty into the line most likely. So if you want like the touchdown equity by the red zone, if you want like the yardage and touchdown type of stuff, I mean the 49ers are favored 4,400. I mean, if he falls in the end zone twice, he can get to 100 yards and 2 touchdowns at 4,400. I don't see that out of the Jets running backs and the Titans. I could see doing that in total. It's just a matter of will it be Foreman, Hilliard, McNichols throws a wrench into all this because he's going to come in on 3rd downs. So like, if you want to take a shot, I don't know. I don't even know if the Lions get into the red zone. So like the Jamar Jefferson or Godwin Igwebuike. I mean, I would more likely play Igwebuike because he at least catches balls out of the backfield. But the Lions are are essentially in the hospital. Like half their team is COVID or they're sick with the flu. I like playing cheap running backs, but like, do I want to? I mean, what's my? You
want to attach yourself to that stench, basically. Which well,
they just have such a low team total. Like, what's the like? I need them to get 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, I'm not even sure if the Lions get 100 yards of offense, let alone rushing yards. So like it's hard. I'd rather take a shot on a Barkley. I'd rather if I'm using a cheap running back, just use Jeff Wilson and just live and die by that. But I'm more likely to use Wilson in the flex than use a cheap wide receiver. I'm trying my best to avoid cheap wide receivers this slate because I think people are going to try to take flyers on some of these guys. And
there aren't any.
But you're going to have to play. Like if you're going to pay up for a Diggs or a Hill or something towards the top, you have to find value somewhere, and people are going to find it most likely at tight end. But it's like if I play Gronk or Kittle or Kelsey in the tight end spot, like where do you find value? Either you're going to do it at the wide receiver position. I'll just do it in the running back position instead, and in defense, right? Paying all the way down for like the Jets or something. More so than try to play a Guyton, try to play Josh Reynolds, one of these Josh Palmer, one of these really cheap wide receiver. And yeah, they'll get the Keelan Cole, right? He's down there.
It's also gross.
Right, it's gross. Right. I look down here, LaVisca, Chenault at 4,300, Josh Reynolds. I'm looking down here, Zay Jones. Byron Pringle, 3,200. People are going to do that. The ownership on these kind of cheapy guys are going to be a little bit more inflated. So like, if that just means I eat Jeff Wilson, then so be it. I'd much rather play Jeff Wilson than any of these 3K to low 4K wide receivers.
You mentioned, both of you guys mentioned Denver, and there's a chance they just get 20 carries to Williams and 20 carries to Gordon. It's a 4:00 game. Who knows? I'm assuming, just like Andre was assuming, that Gordon's going to be a go. Signs are pointing to him playing today. Like, you probably don't need him. And Williams obviously shined in prime time in his one game where Gordon wasn't playing, and I'm not sure if that's going to grab him some more carries or more touches, or they just continue that 50-50 split. But if you're splitting 40 carries 50-50, it's still 20 touches. And the way this game sets up, Denver feels like they're going to absolutely control it against Detroit, who just they got their win. They just wanted the sim button at this point as far as the rest of the season. One more, I think it's
let me I got news. I got a news update, Dean.
Okay,
Jay Glazer just tweeted out no Tony Pollard today for the Cowboys.
Okay.
So I mean, obviously we get inactives at 11:30, but they give you a heads up that if Glazer's reporting no Tony Pollard, that means he's going to probably be on the inactives list in about a half an hour.
And then I got something else that they said when you talking about Jeff Wilson, Sal Palantonio reported that I guess he spoke to someone in the San Francisco side that said that they expect Jeff Wilson to get most of the work today, but I don't put anything into that personally.
Right. Well, those types of reports sometimes they expect. Okay, that doesn't you can trust it or you cannot trust it. Some people go, oh, I trust it. Some people are like, I'm going to disregard it.
Yeah, that game in Jacksonville, he had 19 carries for 50 yards. He was targeted a couple of times. So I think that was a similar circumstance where they were down on running backs. But yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not sure if he's good chalk, Blunder. I'm surprised you're on him, to be honest. But I understand why. Yeah.
It's not that I'm on Jeff Wilson, Dean. It's that I don't want to be on cheap wide receivers. I may not be playing lineups that need a $4,400 running back. To me, it's not the player, it's the construction, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if I had to choose between Jeff Wilson and Laviska Shenault, I'm choosing Jeff Wilson. I'd rather play Jeff Wilson over Jamison Crowder, truthfully, but his ownership is going to start coming in, right? Like, I just don't want to play guys in that. I'd rather play 3 6K wide receivers, 3 5,800, like that range, and then play 6K running backs. Like, most of my builds are going to look more balanced. But if I need the cheapie, it's going to be either at defense, tight end, and I'm going to pair, you play Gerald Everett or something. You play Jared Cook. You play something down there at tight end. Then try to find the cheaper. I mean, I'd rather play Beasley. I mean, I see all these guys in the mid range, like Mike Williams, Hunter Renfrow, DK Metcalf, Beasley, Lockett, Higgins, Landry, DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, even Jamar Chase, I guess. Julio Jones, we have to talk about him. Like, yeah. I'd much rather play 3 of those guys than pay up for Tyreek or Diggs and then go down for like a $3,700. I don't want to make those types of constructions unless it's obviously in a stack. And if I'm going to play a guy, Jeff Wilson's the guy. I mean, it's not that I like Jeff Wilson. Trust me, I don't like Jeff Wilson.
Hey, question. 4 games at 4:00, and some of the most popular games this slate: Buffalo, Tampa. You got the Cincinnati side. You got the Jeff Wilson situation there with San Francisco. Denver, there's a chance, I suppose, that Melvin Gordon doesn't play. There's a chance, we get fully unleashed Javonte Williams one more time. Austin Eckler, possibly the best running back on this slate. We talk about Mike Williams as well, too. We'll talk about in a second as far as wide receivers. Andre, how are you handling the 4:00 games, opposed to the 1:00 games? How you're setting yourself up for some potential switches, like based upon what information you get at 1, where you might kind of tinker with stuff at 4? That makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I'm just trying to right now just get as much, pretty much of like Javonte Williams. I think he starts at 4, I believe 4:00 today, if I'm correct.
Yep.
Trying to get as much as him as I possibly can, and if I need to go down on him to maybe like a guy like Jeff Wilson, just because I feel some kind of iffy way, then I will. But if not, I'm just going to roster as much as him as I possibly can, because I like the matchup for him against Detroit to begin with. And I think like I said, I think both of them could get there, whether it's Melvin Gordon or just him by himself. I think either one of them could get there today. So. Or both of them can. So I don't mind that as well as go with the passing game. So I'm just using that as my little as my personal way of getting leverage, I guess, because I don't want to have to really change anything unless I absolutely need to. And like I said, the Jeff Wilson exposure, I'm just going to be low on him to begin with, so I'm not really that concerned with him. And I know he starts in the afternoon as well. So yeah, another main running backs I'm going to be playing tend to start at 1 o'clock today, except for a guy like Leonard Fournette as well. Because I know now we're gonna have the high exposure on Antonio Gibson, probably. And Zeke Elliott, I'm assuming, is going to go up a lot more now. So that means also Eckler, like we talked about before, should be lesser owned. I think Josh Jacobs' ownership might come down even more than what it is already too. So he might even look even more great. And and same thing with Alvin Kamara. So I'm just going to try to get over the field on those guys, and be a little bit lesser owner at the field now, just with Zeke and guys like Zeke and Antonio Gibson.
I think it's pretty clear the best running backs are Kamara, Eckler, Fournette, Jacobs, Gibson, Zeke. I think that's basically the ones, I might have missed somebody there, but one more I want to throw out there, Blender, and I also want to get your thought as far as the 4 o'clock thought process. Carolina wants to run the ball. I mean, I didn't want to talk about this guy the rest of the season ever again. Well, I'm sure he's a nice guy. Chuba Hubbard. Are we interested in Chuba Hubbard today?
Large field GPPs. I mean, the problem with Hubbard is that Newton steals a lot of those goal line carries. So, and you're going to see a lot of Abdullah also catching the ball out of the backfield. So can you take a shot on him? Sure. I'm not, but I could see in the Billy Maker type of things. I don't think I need to play. He's 5,900. If he was 4,400 like Jeff Wilson, okay, now we're talking. Now we could start mixing him in. But
we live in a world of salary cap, Blender.
Yeah, but he's 5,900. I don't care.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'll buy anybody that's cheap enough. Like if he's 4,400, yeah, I'll take a shot. 5,900. I don't have the funds for that. Like,
right, but that's the main reason against Hubbard. It has nothing to do with him. It's just Antonio Gibson's 100 more. Jacobs is 300 more. Like their expectations are like they project for like 8 more points than them. So like, am I willing to give up like about 6 points in median projection for the sake of Hubbard? Yeah, Hubbard will be barely owned. If you're going to sacrifice that many points, do it in a very large field GPP, but probably not in smaller field stuff.
Oh, another.
Do you want to mention? Go ahead, Andre.
I just want to mention one more guy, Devontae Freeman, against Cleveland. I know it's not really the ideal matchup. Going to come in like not even maybe 1% owned as a flyer in GPPs, deep like million maker GPPs. I would say to use him in, but I think he's getting more of the work now compared to Murray. So I think he's a possible good option. Can maybe sneak in and get a couple touchdowns at the goal line from Lamar Jackson.
Do you want to mention the main contest over here at Yahoo? We talk about it every single week. The $1 Million Baller built-in $200,000 overlay. Built-in $200,000 overlay. They take in $800,000. They give out $1 million. Not even 75% full. Less than 28,000 spots have been claimed at a 40,000. $20 to jump in there. It's also a flat payout as well. $1 million prize pool. $100K up top. I plan on maxing that bad boy out after the show. I have my script ready to go. I'm going to tinker a little bit. If you guys have not played at Yahoo just yet, for whatever reason, use the promo code Grinders25 for a free $25 bonus on your first deposit. You can also join the $50,000 free roll, $5,000 the first contest. Wow, I've not seen that. Apparently that's still lurking out there. All right. So Blender, give me some of your favorite receivers. Give us the rundown. How do you feel about Mike Williams chalk, potentially Jamison Crowder chalk, which in the year 2021 feels about as comfortable as that sounds?
I don't have any favorites. I could just look at the projections and see what looks good. But I mean, from a cash game perspective, you're looking at Mike Williams, Chris Godwin, Hunter Renfrow, Crowder, Diggs or Hill, I guess, Cole Beasley in the mid-range. You get away with like a Higgins or a Landry if it's like a last piece. But I mean, to me, that's maybe Brandon Cooks, but I'm not a big fan of playing a Texans wide receiver. I'm typically not a fan of playing poor offense wide receivers in cash, which Crowder is one of them. So like, I'm not thrilled about playing Crowder in cash, but I get it. But that would be like the cash type of lineup. But as far as obviously with stacks, you're going to be pairing with the quarterback. From a one-off perspective, DK Metcalf, I think the Seattle wide receivers, I'll be on them. The Bengals wide receivers, Higgins and Chase. I think DJ Moore, but I'd rather pair DJ Moore with Cam Newton. And then
I just don't trust he's going to get the volume. I just don't trust they're going to throw the ball. That's kind of my problem.
Yeah, but I mean, at
I like
lower
his
ownership
talent.
point, I mean, what that? But that's what I'm saying. I'd much rather DJ Moore. If DJ Moore has 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, it's quite possible. Newton has 200 yards and 2 touchdowns passing and 2 touchdowns rushing, and he's going to be the top, quarterback. So like, I'm more likely to play more with Newton. But if I had to choose my quote most underowned wide receivers, it would be the Cowboys wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb at 7,200, Amari Cooper at 5,900, Gallup a little bit lesser than 5,500 is a little bit steep now that everyone is kind of healthy. But I mean, he's playable. And the more and more that Zeke ownership goes up, the more and more the wide receivers I like. And also you have to consider the possibility, okay? Because we're all going, okay, Pollard's out, Zeke's going to get 80% of the work, right? Well, what happens if they just don't want to give him 80%? Like he's broken down, and in order to preserve him more, especially against Washington, who has a pretty bad pass defense, they just decide to throw the ball more. They just Zeke will be on the field 80+% of the time, but he'll be blocking for a lot of the snap. I mean, he's still going to get plenty of the work also. I mean, he could easily still get 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, but maybe we see Dak drop back 45 times, because why not attack Washington through the air? And they have a great receiving core. And these guys, from a median perspective, do not project that well. They project okay, right? But the wide receiver position is like the difference between the best play and the okay plays is like 3 points.
It's not much.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, what's 3 points? 1 catch for 20 yards. So that's what separates Chris Godwin from CeeDee Lamb. 1 catch for 20 yards. What separates Mike Williams from Amari Cooper? 1 catch for 20 yards, right? That's all the separation is. Yet Mike Williams is going to be 26% owned in our projections, and Amari Cooper is going to be 9% owned. Like that disparity shouldn't be there. It should be closer to that. So to me, it's turning out from what I'm looking at right now. I think if I had to favorite or the most underowned would be to play Gibson, a 3+1 with Gibson. So Dak plus Lamb plus Cooper plus Gibson. I think that's the most underowned way that's the best way to use Gibson in your lineup. And because he's going to be the highest owned running back. And I think the passing game for the Cowboys is going to be underowned.
Andre, how are you handling receivers? We talk about potentially dusty Zeke. Now we have potentially dusty Julio Jones. Just like, in-game injury is like, I don't know, feels like a 50-50 deal. It's a great matchup, and he's the last man standing, right? He's obviously, he's going to be vaulting to the top guy there with Tennessee with nobody else around lurking. Thoughts as far as receivers? If you have specific thoughts as far as Julio Jones, who's got a pretty appealing price too. It's tempting. I'm tempted.
Oh, well, he's in my season long, so I'm playing him today. But I think he's a good play today. I don't think they would be bringing him back if he wasn't healthy. So I'll take my chances. Be at the field with them. I'm not going to go over the field, but because I want to be on the early before everyone else is, and everyone's going to take the wait and see approach. So to me, he's a good option too. I like to get to. Obviously, I also like Chris Godwin coming out of the slot. A lot more now. I think that's going to benefit him a lot and get a lot more catches with Tom Brady for sure. And obviously, I love the Bengals wide receivers because one of my favorite quarterbacks today. And every week, pretty much, if y'all want to say that, which is true, with Jamar Chase specifically going to be able to take the top off of the defense. I think he's due. He was a catch last week away from pretty much breaking the slate, and he dropped the ball and it got intercepted actually. But I think he's due for a bounce back spot. It's going to come sooner rather than later. Hunter Renfro's a good option I like to get to as well. Cole Beasley just in the slot. I know he hasn't been a Cole Beasley like we have grown to see him be over the past few years, but I think that he's a good option just to catch a lot of the balls in the zone and just move the ball down the field, especially since they're not going to be able to run the ball against the against Tampa Bay, because they're front. So I pretty much like getting to him for sure. Jared Jeudy, someone else I don't mind getting to as well. I think we have to also consider playing DK Metcalf too. Just the Seattle receivers. I don't personally like the Seattle quarterback, but the Seattle receivers I think are in play with Metcalf and Lockett as well. I do, and what Blender's saying about the Cowboys receivers, I was already on them and Dak probably higher, but now I'm gonna try to get a little bit more of them. I like Amari Cooper a lot, Gallup, and I like CeeDee Lamb. Just having them more now, especially because I'm gonna have a lot of Gibson in my lineups, so I'll probably will be running a lot of Dak stacks now, especially with everyone's gonna probably try to be on Zeke since it's a fresh news in their head. So less Zeke, more Dak for me. And more Amari Cooper, and more CeeDee Lamb, and more Gallup, and more also Dalton Schultz, who I think is another good option at tight end, which we didn't get to yet. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of my main wide receivers I like today. Yeah.
Want to knock out some questions from chat, so we got to do real quick as far as tight ends. You can go super cheap. Like Brock Wright is a person that will be catching balls allegedly for the Lions today. O'Shaughnessy is a cheapie. Austin Hooper is the last tight end standing for Cleveland. We talked about Jared Cook, even Parham potentially as a cheapie. Of course, you can spend up on guys like Kelsey. You can spend up on Kittle. You can spend up on Andrews. Andre, give me 30 seconds as far as how you're handling tight ends.
Playing more than the field of Austin Hooper, playing more than the field of Jared Cook, playing a little bit at the field of Rob Gronkowski, playing more than the field of Knox. And whoever else lands on there, trying to get some Travis Kelce in there as well.
Same thing, Leonard?
Yeah, I'm kind of saying I would just add Gerald Everett to that list for the Seahawks at 3,500. Like
he was shaving
there's no discernible reason based even just on aggregate projections that Everett should be like. Everett is not that much different of a play than Hooper or Cook or O'Shaughnessy or Moreau or any of these guys. I mean, like there's no reason why we have Everett as like twice as less owned as Hooper, Cook, and O'Shaughnessy, and the difference in projection is like nothing. It's like just there's no reason. They're all around the same price. He's 3,500. Oh, he's a little bit more. You have to spend a couple of more shekels on him. So find the $100, take it out of defense, and play a little bit different of a tight end. I think tight end ownership is going to be spread out enough. Like it's going to be these like 4 or 5 guys that can get most of like the ownership somewhere in the low 10 to 15% range. But it's not like there's one tight end that's like 40% owned, where it's like just it's not Foster Moreau from last week of just get rid of him and you just eliminates all this ownership. So and then paying up at tight end will be contrarian. And
nobody's playing Kelsey, like 8%, 9% maybe, right?
Right. Like Kelsey, Kittle, people will be playing Gronk. I mean, even Gronk at 6K is tough to fit in. So like, I'll be getting to them, but I think I'm getting to them more in like Kelsey is in my Mahomes lineups. Gronk is in my Brady lineups, right? Doing something more like that than playing them as a one-off, I guess. Only because I think there's more value in the cheap tight ends as a one-off. I get because I'd be stacked. Yeah, okay. I'm just kind of talking this through. Just that I just don't want to be. I don't want to be stuck with 9 out of 18 of lineups with Brock Wright in it. I just don't. I don't want that. Like that's my main concern of like, oh great, so Brock, I have 50% Brock Wright exposure. Hopefully he's on. Hopefully he catches 3 balls.
He's 2.5K. He did catch a touchdown last week for what it's worth. He is had terrible numbers. I was looking at his numbers historically at Notre Dame in college, but we don't have time for that. Got to knock out some questions in chat. Whatever questions we don't get, of course. Stick around. We're taking you guys all up to lock. Ben and Erik are going to follow us. Then crunch time with Luch, Tuttle, Kristi as well. I know you play DK Cash. So tell me this, Blender, is 3 Chargers too many in DK Cash?
No, if you wanted to play Eckler, Williams, and Cook, there. I mean, I've seen what lineup you're talking about. I think that's fine. In fact, understand that in cash games, like that actually may be more beneficial because then you don't have to worry about where the ball goes. Obviously, because the Guyton and Palmer, you're screwed. But like, if you want to bet on the Chargers and go, as long as I get all the points from Eckler, Cook, and Williams, like I'm fine. But just understand if the Chargers just crap the bed and only put up like 10 points, like you're in bad shape also. So understand that like it's okay in cash games to play multiple guys from one team, but those are the positives and the benefit and the negatives.
Lightning round. I'm going to knock out a couple before we step aside and get out of here. Andre, DK tournaments, rank Tannehill, Dak, and Cam.
Dak, Cam, Tannehill.
Andre, you got any interest in Alex Collins, running back versus Houston today?
No, don't do it. Please don't do it.
Let's see. I'm trying to see. Blender, your favorite single entry, 3-entry max stack. I think it was the Dallas Washington one, if I heard you correctly before.
I mean, the highest expectation is the Brady one, but I think from a ownership perspective, it's the Dak one.
Blender cash, Godwin and Renfro versus Tyreek and Crowder.
I'm playing the first one, so I'm gonna choose the first one. I don't think you need to play. I don't think you need to pay up for Hill or Diggs and cash on DraftKings.
Pick one of these three, Andre. Mitchell, Hubbard, and Hillard. Mitchell's not playing, right? Am I missing something? Is there a different Mitchell? All right, Hubbard or instead of my bad. I can't read. Hubbard or Hillard, Andre?
Hubbard. Oh no, what site?
Yeah, I think it's just a season-long question. I'm pretty sure.
Hubbard.
Yeah. It's the playoffs, right? So it's crunch time for the playoffs. One more for you for cash, Blender. I know you're the cash guy, but I know you're playing cash today. Jacobs or Javonte Williams, which is a tricky one because Jacobs
that's not tricky at all.
If Gordon doesn't play, Javonte's a smash.
Yeah, but Gordon's playing, so I don't even care.
Probably.
Jacobs, they have no other running backs. Rashard is out and Drake is out. Like Jacobs is the past 3 weeks has gotten a 20% target share for the Raiders. Waller's still out. Like Jacobs' value is not. We think of Jacobs from a year ago of like, he doesn't catch balls out of the backfield. Dude, he's catching like 9 balls out of the backfield and on a point per dollar PPR site. Like to me, Jacobs and Gibson aren't coming out of my cash lineup on DraftKings no matter what. So I'm playing them. Yes.
We got to step aside and get out of here, dude. Thank you, Blender, for stepping in for Grant. Thanks, Andre. We got to get you out of here and get you to the game today. Enjoy that the Jets and the Saints. We look to your Saints. Thanks to the chat. Do it, that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications. Don't go anywhere. You're gonna get you're gonna get Beer Makers fans. His six pack. Could not say that for some reason. And not just that. Following the six pack there from Beer Makers fan, you're gonna get Erik and Ben breaking down this slate from a galaxy brain, what if, like GPP perspective. It's a good conversation for sure. And then after that, if your question was not answered there, my apologies. Couldn't get to them all, but they're gonna answer them on crunch time. They'll knock out as many as possible with Tuttle and Justin and Kristi. Thanks to Devin for producing. That was Andre. That was Blender. That was the chat. I was Dean. That was football. We're out of here. Oh.
Here back in the Fantasy Bar, 6 plays for you for week 14 on Yahoo, including a couple guys under $20. I think are nice value plays. What games I'm targeting here, a stack I'm looking at, and of course, my favorite play of the week. Who we talking about? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 14 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Talking some Yahoo here with 6 of my favorite plays. Thank you, as always, for stopping by and checking out the video. Now, before we get into the plays, couple things. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Get notified when these videos are coming out. Already have a Fanduel and Draftkings video coming out. Link is right there. You can go check that out. 6 more plays that I'm looking at for week 14. Also, head over to scoresandodds.com/beer. for tons of sports betting information, including premium picks from some of your favorite personalities at Rotogrinders, myself included, giving you some picks each and every week. And a special offer from Yahoo. Still continue to give away free money. Guys, click that link below the description. Take advantage of this offer while you can over on Yahoo. All right, let's get into the plays here for week 14. Let's start at the running back position with Deonta Forman of the Titans, just $15. Great spot here for the Titans and for the running game here. I know there's some concern. Is it Hilliard? Is it Forman? I think there's enough for both of these guys to get it going here against the Jacksonville Jags. We look back to the last time we saw this team against a much tougher defense in the New England Patriots. Forman went over 100 yards in that game, 19 carries. So we know the Titans want to run the ball, whether it's Derrick Henry running the ball 38 times or this combination of Forman and Hilliard. I don't think that's going to change here. The Jags have been very vulnerable against rushing touchdowns as well, which fits well with this Forman play. 12 touchdowns allowed, bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to this position as well, and a big home favorite. You guys know I love to target running backs in this scenario. We get that here. Tennessee, 8.5-point home favorites here. Deonta Foreman, a little bit of risk, no doubt. The reward very high here as well, and just $15. All right, let's go to the tight end position. A guy that disappointed last week. Let's go back to the well on Foster Moreau of the Raiders. Now, clearly this one contingent on Darren Waller not playing in this game. We're not sure as of this recording, but I wanted to include Foster Moreau. If Waller's back, we will make the substitution, so keep an eye on that in the comment section of the video here on YouTube. But if Moreau is the guy again, I definitely want to go back there. It was chalk last week, disappointed a lot of people, so we're going to get a big discount on his ownership here. And this game sets up as one you're going to want some exposure to these Vegas pass catchers against the Chiefs, likely playing from behind here. Kansas City, bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to this position. Don't be afraid to go back to Foster Moreau here. Nice value at just $13. All right, let's go to the other side of that game. Mahomes, Hill, Kelsey, obviously can go that route. But I'm going to go to the running game here. I'm going to go with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, just $20. Now, I get it. Darrell Williams is there. He's getting some work. That's not going to change. But Edwards-Helaire, the upper hand in this committee here, and I think we're going to see that split start to favor him more and more. And even if it is a split down the middle, he's getting the early down work. He's the guy that's going to be there for the touchdown possibilities here against this Raiders team. There's certainly going to be a ton of that. We know the Chiefs projected team total over 28, projected for 4 touchdowns here. Big home favorites like we talked about with Deonta Foreman, and a Raiders defense we know is not very good against the run. 6th most fantasy points allowed this season. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire, just like Deonta Foreman, risky because they're in a committee. I think the upside is huge here in this matchup with the Raiders. All right, let's go to the quarterback position next, and we're going to go back to another guy that disappointed in his last outing, quarterback Cam Newton of Carolina. So $27 here for Cam Newton is not a bad price at all here on Yahoo. Was very good in his first start back with Carolina, was awful in his last start against the Miami Dolphins, but that is a Miami defense that's playing at a pretty high level right now. So I'm going to give him a pass here and go back to the well against this Atlanta defense that has not slowed anybody down. And we know Cam's game is running, a rushing touchdown so far in each of the 3 appearances. We've seen him the 2 starts and the game in Arizona where he was just coming in situationally. You have no Christian McCaffrey. Some people may look at that as a disadvantage. I think it's one less guy he's got to compete with in that backfield for Carolina for those rushing touchdowns. So I think the upside gets even higher here for Cam Newton. If it's McCaffrey, sure, it helps the whole offense. It's more attention paid to him. But Chuba Hubbard, not exactly a guy I'm worried about for those rushing touchdowns. Atlanta, as I said earlier, has not slowed anybody down. 2nd most fantasy points allowed to this position. Don't be afraid to go back to the well here on Cam Newton. All right, we are going to pair him up. You don't have to, but we're going to do it. Wide receiver DJ Moore, just $20. Now, these two have shown a good connection so far. In the 2 starts by Cam Newton, we're talking 17 targets here for DJ Moore. We know we have not seen a massive game out of him in a while. Does that mean it's coming this week? We'll see. I'm expecting a big performance here against Atlanta. We talked about how bad they are against quarterbacks. Naturally, not very good against wide receivers either. 7th most fantasy points allowed to this position and 3rd most touchdowns allowed as well. So a lot of signs pointing to DJ Moore. I love Carolina in the spot, and $20, a great value price. I need wide receiver 1 here against a terrible Atlanta secondary. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play for week 14 on Yahoo. But before we do that, we want to continue our Beast of the Week contest. Absolutely free to play. All you got to do, get in the comment section right below the video and guess fantasy points here on Yahoo for my favorite play. The closest guess and win yourselves a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. So without further ado, let's get to it. Let's wrap this baby up. My favorite play for week 14, you know, Mass, Beast of the Week. All right, Beast time, we're going to stay at that wide receiver position. We've saved you a lot of money so we can spend up on Stephon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills, $29, this week's Beast of the Week. Now, this game, obviously, the one a lot of people are going to be targeting, myself included. This could be an old-fashioned shootout here between these two offenses. And Stefon Diggs, the main dog here in Buffalo. We know Tampa, a lot of different ways that they can go with the ball. Godwin, Evans, Gronk. Diggs is the guy here for Buffalo. 7 or more targets in 10 of his 12 games so far this season, so you get a nice floor with the targets. We know the ceiling is there as well for a multiple touchdown game. This guy can rip off 150 yards any given week, especially against the secondary like he's going to see this week. Bottom half of the NFL in receiving yards, receptions, touchdowns. I could go on and on and on here. Stefon Diggs, one of the better high-end plays on the slate. My favorite play on Yahoo in this week's Beast of the Week. All right, guys, that wraps up for week 14 in the Fantasy Bar here on Yahoo. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, hit me up in that comment section right below the video. Don't forget, fantasy points for Stefon Diggs for your shot at a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. Hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And go and check out scoresandodds.com/beer for all of your sports betting needs. Link right there in the description of the video. For Rotogrinders.com, I am Beer saying salut, guys. Best of luck here on Yahoo this week. We'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks for checking out our videos. If you want more expert advice on DraftKings, Fanduel, or any other daily fantasies,
What is going on, guys? Welcome to week 14 GPP final takes on rotogrinders.com. As always, I'm your host, Erik Beimfohr. You can find me on Twitter at Erik Beimfohr. And I'm also, as always, joined by Ben Gretch at Yards Per Gretch on Twitter and the author of the Stealing Signals newsletter, which I feel like I've started to have to say this way too many weeks. But today, I do feel like how you break down some of these, specific situations of guys in, guys out, guys getting bumps and rolls, and, seeing if it's, spoiler, if you don't subscribe to Ben's newsletter, he points out what is like signal and what is noise and some of the results of every single fantasy relevant player that we see. And this week in particular, there's a lot of like kind of crazy situations. And I feel like they're almost all like towing the line on this could be super relevant for this DFS slate, or this could be something where it's like, yeah, something changed, but maybe it's not really that big of a deal. And there's a bunch of those across a bunch of different teams. I want to start, I think, at running back with you, because that's when I want to pick your brain the most. And I guess we'll lead in with the most expensive guy. So this we can kind of hit a twofer here. Austin Eckler is oddly enough, feels very weird to say, the most expensive running back on a DFS slate on DraftKings. I believe projecting for the most raw points, projecting to be fairly popular, which makes a lot of sense because the team is without Keenan Allen. The matchup is good, big favorites against the Giants, blah, blah, blah. However, 8,300 most expensive Austin Eckler while getting ownership is like a tricky thing for me to figure out. How are you kind of thinking about Eckler, amongst the running back position? And then maybe if you want to use that to kind of lead in on this Charger situation without Keenan, because I think that's maybe the biggest one today.
Oh, it's not for me, actually. That's one that, I think Eckler makes a lot of sense. I'm seeing Antonio Gibson project as sort of like the really chalk decision at running back.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I think Eckler's a fine play. This game is interesting. This is a game I took the under on, which like I don't feel great about. It's a low total, but it is worth noting. Like the Giants have given up, I think it's 20 or fewer points in like 4 of their last 5 or 5 of their last 6 because they're doing the 2 deep stuff, which and their explosive play rate over the last like 6-7 weeks allowed. Explosive pass play rate is very low, which that's the type of defense that is attributed to Staley and the Chargers, right, everywhere. That's kind of like ruined our fun this entire NFL season. So basically both teams are going to do it. Glennon's not going to push the Chargers necessarily. While the Giants have given up the bad explosive play rates, their success rates against are poor. The Chargers should be able to move the ball down the field, but they're also without Keenan Allen. So, that's their chain mover in the passing game. I think that could be a little bit of a knock on their passing efficiency. Obviously, some of that's going to shift over to Eckler. I mean, that's sort of the expectation in a lot of the projections. It could shift to the different tight ends. They've used 3 different tight ends at various times to some success. It could obviously shift to like Mike Williams or some of the other receivers. But I also just think like this game probably winds up being somewhat slow and boring. Like, I don't know if the Chargers push it late if Glennon is not doing anything offensively, right? Like this feels like a 20-10 game. 24-10 game, something boring. The Chargers offense is fun when they hit on explosive plays down the field, like they did last week. They hit on, a bomb to Mike Williams, a couple deep shots to Jalen Guyton, one for a TD, one that got him down inside the 10-yard line. That's not likely to happen necessarily against the Giants. So this is a game that actually for me is sort of off of my main focus. I'm really narrowing it on 3 different games as my main focus.
Okay, so we're going to pivot then a little bit from the running back position. Mike Williams is a guy. How are you handling someone like a Mike Williams? Because no Keenan Allen has the potential, right, for like a pretty insane target share here, but you have those game concerns. Is this a guy that given he's certainly not going to be, overlooked on this slate? Is this the kind of guy, you're avoiding, you're still targeting because of, this situation, or how are you handling someone like Mike Williams?
Yeah. I mean, if you zoom out and you look at the slate, right, like the 43 over under in that game, the right off the top, I mean, compare that to the Tampa Bay Buffalo game, which has a 52-5 over under. It's way out there in terms of, when you just take that big picture, look at the slate, like that's the game you'd want to play. It's more difficult to play from a salary perspective. But in terms of like which, like you can only fit so much salary into your lineups and stuff. And so in terms of which stuff I'm finding myself missing out on, I would say Mike Williams falls into that category. He could definitely have a monster game. He could definitely go up to 30-35% target share. We saw that earlier this year where his role kind of had shifted in a positive way. We saw it last year at times. I go back to the New Orleans Saints game where Keenan left early. I think he scored an early touchdown, then left, and then Mike Williams went on to have a monster game. I'm pretty sure it was a showdown slate, and Williams kind of broke that slate. He hadn't shown much ceiling at all. As soon as Keenan went out of that game, he became the clear number 1. We've talked earlier in the year that he's sort of this receiver that you have to throw open. Herbert sort of acknowledged this. If Herbert has to throw him open, right? Keenan's not on the field. You don't have this great separator on the field. Then he probably is more likely to do that. At the same time, in tournaments and in this game environment, a 43 over under, and at a huge ownership, I mean, I think it's pretty easy for me to be like, this is the one that I'm more willing to miss out on than missing out on exposure to like Buffalo and Tampa or some of these other games that come in at a lot lower ownership, give me some opportunity to differentiate.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. What I really like about Mike Williams today is actually, if you're going to play someone as popular as him at a price point, honestly, that everywhere from like a 5K wide receiver up to, obviously the Diggs and Tyreeks is pretty loaded today. There's a lot of guys. There's guys that are going to come in super low owned today in that tier that are pretty darn good plays. And so if I'm going to sacrifice, if I'm going to slot in that level of ownership, given all the other options, I think I want to build for a scenario that this, because couldn't agree more with your assessment of the game, but like we need the game to go a different way. If Mike Williams is going to be the man and outscore all of those guys, Like he is going to catch a long bomb, which maybe then does speed up the Giants stink. Trust me, I don't want to click the Giants either.
Yeah.
But like, okay, Sterling Shepard is back, right? Kadarius Toney is out. We think Kenny Golladay is going to come back. Yep, maybe Sterling Shepard is like your cheap run back you play in the flex or whatever, because we've seen him catch 10 balls or something in a game before. Or Saquon Barkley is literally the same price as Antonio Gibson, who you mentioned earlier, who we will definitely get to, right? And in a similar price tier to Josh Jacobs, who I also think is going to garner his fair share of ownership. And no one wants to play Saquon, but he's also the same thing. He's the running back equivalent to how do we speed this game up?
Yep, absolutely. 100%. The Chargers, because they sit back in too deep, they're very beatable on the ground. They allow teams to run on them a ton. They allow, I think they have the number one success rate rushing success rate against their defense. They're way up there in rushing yards allowed and rush attempts against and rushing efficiency, all of it. And they do that against every team, even though the Giants are a team that, like, you don't need to sit back in two deep zone against Mike Glennon, probably. They're still going to do it. They've done it in every single matchup. They did it against Roethlisberger, who couldn't get the ball down the field. And that actually helped Pittsburgh have one of their better offensive games because they want to sort of matriculate the ball down the field. So this is absolutely the game where if you're in on Barkley's ceiling and you're not in on his explosive plays and at the exposure that he's going to be at in these tournaments, I mean, I think you take your shot here. I mean, this is the game where he should have his opportunities for his big plays. And exactly like you said, that would speed up the game. I think if I was playing this game, and especially if I was playing Mike Williams, I'd want to correlate it back with Saquon.
Yep. I think so too. That was the one thing that stuck out to me. I find it hard to play like one-off Mike Williams, especially then if you're dabbling into, we'll get to Gibson here in a second. You start really compounding guys in this mid-tier that are going to be really popular, and without any sort of correlation that both gives you leverage, right? Saquon Barkley is providing you pretty insane ownership leverage. And then, right, you're only having to get one thing right. Saquon hits that 80-yard touchdown. Not only is he winning you the running back position at much lower ownership, he forces the Chargers to do the thing we need them to do today. So that'll lead in. I do want to, you're absolutely right on the Antonio Gibson thing. And somebody asked in chat, Mr. Wade asked in chat, do we know on McKissick? And yes, JD McKissick is out today. The other interesting thing that I actually think is pretty significant in terms of how you're handling Antonio Gibson today is they did not bring Wendell Smallwood back up from the practice squad, which sounds ridiculous that we're like, that's something to consider. But Wendell Smallwood and Rivera even talked about it last week, was used in like a McKissick light role, kind of. He did steal passing down work and stuff from Antonio Gibson. Now it's Jarrett Patterson and Jonathan Williams as the backups to Antonio Gibson. So how are you thinking about just Gibson? Obviously he's going to be popular, but how are you thinking about this role? And does the obviously McKissick being out, but does the Wendell Smallwood thing change anything for you?
Yeah, it does. I'm trying to pull up the routes from last week real quick, but yeah, Smallwood was only at 9% routes, which is like not much. Gibson was up at 67% routes as a percentage of dropbacks last week, which was a season high. He basically got everything he could handle last week. Smallwood did, but even like, I do think it changes things because it tells us that Smallwood's not going to go from 9% to 15% or 20% and cut it to Gibson. 2, that's an extra 9% because they haven't really run the rookie Patterson in a ton of routes throughout the year, really any at all. And Jonathan Williams, I don't think is going to profile that way either. So that, to me, it's like, wow, now we're even just locking in even more that Gibson's going to be at a 65% plus route rate, which is really positive for his role. The only way I think he really fails is if sort of the whole offense fails, because I think we're getting all sorts of indications, and we have sort of all year, even when McKissick was active, they've been trying to push Gibson more. He's been hurt throughout the middle stretch of the season. Early in the year, he was hitting route rates that were kind of career highs for him because he didn't really hit these numbers last year very frequently. Now he's up in a whole nother plateau because he's typically in this like 40% routes range. He's at 67% last week. We get that type of number of routes and that potential target volume on top of obviously his goal line equity and his rushing volume. It's a tough fade. He's going to be really, really chalky, but he's a tough fade for sure.
Yeah, I think, I'm definitely not going to call him like, I remember we had Alexander Madison or whatever at like 5,500. I'm not going to call him that. I believe Madison was playing the Lions. So it's certainly a different situation than that. But if you just go look at lineup HQ now, I have the blitz projections pulled up, so I apologize. But like Antonio Gibson at 6K projects for the second most raw fantasy points on DraftKings at running back. And like, there's some other guys who project well too. So I don't think it's a case of like there aren't pivots available. But once you get past a couple of guys, we're talking about you're giving up 7, 8, 10 points of projection by not playing Gibson. So I think, again, it's a similar thing. It's not that you have to play Antonio Gibson, but I would be smart about how I'm doing it, right? Like you said, I want that offense to fail, right? Or maybe it goes through the passing game, right? Maybe I'm stacking it up and McLaurin is the guy, that has 7 for 120 and 2 touchdowns or something like that, right? So I would just be smart about
but even that, like, I feel like, even that seems like it positively will impact Gibson a little bit, right?
Right, catches.
Yeah. If they're throwing that much, and if McLaurin, even if he's having that big of a game down the field, it probably puts him more in run scripts as well if he has the multiple touchdowns, or unless it's just all late, right? That kind of a thought made me immediately be like, I think you could play Gibson and McLaurin together. Maybe a lot of people won't play it that way, that Washington wins this game, and not really load up on Dallas. I don't know. I completely agree. You have to play them intelligently. I like the Dallas stack. This is one of the 3 games that I mentioned that I want to be playing. I want to be playing Dak, CD, Amari. I think, people are going to be a little bit light on those guys. Amari coming back from, not really playing full snaps last week after his sort of COVID symptoms were, extended. I think he's a good contrarian way to attack this and potentially correlate with Gibson. Lamb is coming in too low owned for his ceiling. Yep. So there's various ways to play this game. I do think, just playing a one-off Gibson is probably not the right move in tournaments.
Yeah, we will definitely get to this game because I do have some additional follow-up questions on this game, and the Cowboys they look like a really fun spot today. And they just always, for whatever reason, it's like the only time, like they'll get popular a little bit here and there, right? Maybe when, we'll get like Amari at like 5,400 or something like that randomly in a good spot. But like CD's always kind of priced up, and they have 3 guys plus Zeke, right? They have this awkward, they have Dalton Schultz is getting production. So they never, ever project the best at their position. So you can just like always comfortably stack the Cowboys in tournaments, which is like not something we would have said, even like early this year. So I totally agree there. Let's polish up some running back stuff because there's another super interesting situation that maybe I have a little bit of a different take than the field does that I want to get your take on. The third highest, I believe, projected owned running back that we have right now is Jeff Wilson Jr. So obviously Eli Mitchell is out for the 49ers. Their running back room is just like ravaged with injuries. However, JaMychal Hasty is back, and the reports are that Debo is expected to play today. The typical caveats about exactly what his role will be, blah, blah, blah. But so Jeff Wilson is 4,400, on the road at Cincinnati. And I don't know how you're feeling about him. I personally have extremely severe concerns about him as a fantasy play today. Do I, if I'm making a bet, right, gun to my head, does he get most of the rushing work and probably have a positive expectation? Yeah, but we're traveling across the road to a Cincinnati defense that is not that bad. Jeff Wilson has never, ever caught passes. Debo is playing. We saw Debo siphon off work from Eli Mitchell. We've seen Juszczyk and JaMychal Hasty still passing down work. I think that there's a lot of ways that this can go south for Jeff Wilson. So at his ownership, I'm a little bit worried about him. Are you agree or am I way off base, or what do you think about Jeff Wilson?
I don't think you're way off base. The price is a huge factor because as cheap as he is at 4,400 on DK, I think he's 4,900 on FanDuel. Yeah. He basically has to be the backup. That's not true for tournaments, obviously, because you do need ceiling. But I'll say this: like a lot of people are going back to I believe it was the Jacksonville game where he played the 58% snap share. He did get a few targets in that game. He had the near miss on a potential receiving touchdown. Garoppolo missed him wide open. Everyone's been playing that on Twitter this week. In that game, Hasty wasn't active. Mitchell was out. Trey Sermon was his backup. Trey Sermon played his 3rd highest snap share of the year. Like, they didn't have a lot of options. So now we do have a different mix than we've seen. We have not seen Wilson and Hasty together other than I believe last week was the only time they've played together, and Elijah Mitchell was at a 84% snap share last week. So those two guys barely played. The question is, yes, with Wilson's health, he wasn't even necessarily a lock to play this week. With Hasty, when he's played more, he's played on passing downs and in the goal line a little bit. He was sort of the high value touchback, impacting Mitchell a little bit early in the year at times when he was healthy. High value touches, or touches inside the 10-yard line and all receptions. Those are really valuable for fantasy scoring, obviously. And so, yeah, if Hasty's getting all of that work, although Wilson we've seen as the goal line hammer before as well, right? At times, like even way back a couple of years ago when he wasn't even anything, he had like multi-TD games with stealing from, Mostert and Coleman and whoever the main backs were back then. It's a tough read. I understand your take in terms of like fading him in tournaments. I think it's like you can definitely tell yourself that the workload projections are just off on this guy because it is very volatile. We don't know for sure, but at the same time, at his price point, it's a little bit tricky as well because he doesn't need a ton to kind of. I mean, I don't know if it kills you, but it doesn't need a ton to get there. Like and it frees up a lot to play him. I can see why the ownership's going to be there.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think we'll get to some of these other running backs. I think for me personally, like in a different week, if it were a weaker, probably even what last week or what, remember we had like the first week Michael Carter was out when we sat here and talked about Zach Wilson for 45 minutes. Like we had that week where it was like, oh, is David Johnson playable? We're talking about some of those guys. I'd be like, yeah, I just really, feel much stronger about Jeff Wilson. We talked about Gibson, Eckler. I don't know that I'm playing Eckler today, but I'm certainly not hating on anybody that's playing Austin Eckler today. The spend up option, the highest spend up option to me, that's kind of crazy that he's not projecting for more ownership for me is Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is back at 7,900 on DraftKings. And trust me, I understand like the whole Taysom, doesn't throw to the running back type of thing or whatever. But like, we're talking about the Jets and Mark Ingram is out for Kamara. And they mentioned that they could have brought him back last week. I believe I saw a quote that was like, we were just kind of playing it safe with him essentially. And like, I mean, anytime we've ever seen Alvin Kamara, I don't think that the pass catching stuff even matters as long as he's the man. When he's the man in a good matchup, he's a smash, certainly at 7,900. So what, do you have any?
Yeah, just with the pass catching stuff, I would add Taysom threw the running backs 9 times last week. I mean, Ty Montgomery played running back last week. He did not. I think he only lined up outside at wide receiver a couple of times. He's their pass catching running back these last couple of weeks in the Kamara role. He had 7 targets last week. In some like data sets, he's still showing up as a receiver because he started the year playing receiver. He's obviously played both throughout his career. He's had a couple games where he's been pretty exclusively the running back now, sort of in the Kamara role. He had 7 targets last week. Ingram had 2. They had 9. I mean, Hill doesn't have anyone to throw to. Last year when he wasn't throwing to his backs and everything, like he had Michael Thomas, he was throwing to at a 30% rate. He was really locking into Thomas. If Taysom Hill's going to throw, and especially like what we saw last week, I think there's going to be plenty of checkdowns, especially against the Jets. Like you said, like the Jets give up a ton of passes to running backs. So I think Kamara is definitely interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely higher than the market on Kamara just because even the Saints, even with a Taysom with a messed up finger or whatever offense, I just don't see how they don't hang a fairly significant number here. And like you said, like who the hell else do they have?
Yeah.
Is Traquan Smith going to score 2 touchdowns? Like, is Marquez Callaway going to come back to preseason form? I mean, I guess maybe. Like, is Tony Jones going to steal work from him? Like, and so I think it's another one that we've talked about this, right?
And that's
how many weeks?
That's what you're playing is the Alvin Kamara game where they even throw to him down the field. They're just like, he's our offense today.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where they're going to be. I mean, that's also partially like what has gotten him hurt a little bit this year. He was playing a fairly significant amount and a huge role for them on a really crappy offense, when they had Jameis and stuff. But like, I think this is the short stretch that we get, right? Next year, it won't be this because Michael Thomas will be back. They'll probably bring in another running back. This is a short stretch where they're like, if we want to win, it's Kamara. What do you want to do? Deonta Harris has been like their best wide receiver. He's, he's serving his suspension now. They just don't have a lot else. We've seen him, remember championship week of the season-long playoffs last year, 6 touchdowns, right? Won a bunch of people all kinds of money. And I think it's a situation, like I said, we talk all the time on this show about, I just want to be out in front of it. I understand like the projections, like, we're not going to give him all the work. I would rather, when no one else is thinking that, like, what if this is the 90 to 95%, right? What if he's Christian McCaffrey against the Jets at 7,900 and no one is playing him?
From a ceiling perspective, he's right there with all the other options on the slate in terms of the running back ceiling. Obviously, I mean, the price is a lot. I'm not actually playing Kamara. I don't think he's like a really good points per dollar play, but the ceiling is there to justify it. Absolutely.
Yep. That's absolutely it. And there are good point per dollar plays, right? From a media, we talked about Jeff Wilson is one of them. Gibson, all those guys are good point. Another good point per dollar play that has stepped into this insane receiving role at running back in what sets up to be like the most obvious, trailing script ever is Josh Jacobs, and his price has not adjusted for the fact that now, especially Kenyon Drake is out. I'm not even sure that Kenyon Drake really even mattered that much for him, given the routes he was running. But the passing role is like almost all Jacobs now. And the funny thing about him, not to go all like hand in the dirt, is like that's like kind of what he was best at coming into the NFL. He was like a fine runner, but he was like a really good receiver at Alabama out of the backfield. Actually played that role more often than as like a true early down grinder. And then he gets typecast into this other role, and now we're seeing what he can do with the 6, 7, 8, 9 targets a game. How do you feel about Jacobs here against the Chiefs?
I think he's another solid play. I think you said it right. Like, his routes have already been pretty high. He's been getting targeted. The couple games where they were lower, he had an injury, a little bit of an injury thing. He left early in week 7 prior to the week 8 bye. And then week 9 coming out of the bye, I think he was still questionable from that. That was a period where he was like talking publicly that he wasn't actually hurt. He's like just disagreeing with his own team. But his routes were down in that game as well. Other than those 2 games on either side of the bye, like he can go all the way back to like week 4, I think it is. He's had 48% of dropbacks. He's been out on a route every single one of the other games since then. He was up at 71% last week. Like, he has the potential to be a true workhorse. 48% for a running back is strong. Like, they're going to stay in pass protection sometimes. If you get up around like 70%, that's very good. Yep. If you're around 50%, that's solid. Especially if you're a running back like Jacobs, who's going to get all of the carries and get the goal line work. Now we're talking about a pretty solid, all around profile. So, I mean, I think he definitely has the ceiling as well in a way that probably people don't recognize. Again, another one where I'm questioning the game environment. The Chiefs have just been so weird. I could totally see it flip. Not one of my 3 main games I'm looking at. The San Fran Cincy game is, I mentioned Dallas and Washington, and then obviously the Buffalo Tampa Bay game that we're going to have to talk about at some point.
Yeah, we'll polish up these running backs. I'm really excited to hear your Cincinnati San Fran again, because I'm very excited for that game as well. And I don't think the market, other than Jeff Wilson, is very excited for that one. So I do just want to polish up. I'm just looking real quick any other running backs. So Melvin Gordon is expected to be back, and Javonte is still getting a good bit of ownership, which is a little bit crazy to me. I mean, I'm a massive Javonte stan. I'm really excited for him in the future, but I think in terms of efficient ownership, he might end up being over-owned, assuming Melvin does come back. Not that he can't have a good game. I like him just fine, whatever. It's the Lions, and like half their team is out with COVID and the regular flu and all that. But I do find it funny that like 5,900 Javonte with Melvin back is getting like a good clip of ownership. And then I also want to bring up Tony Pollard is out. We got that news this morning. He tested out his foot, and he is not going to give it a go today. So, the matchup is not perfect, although I guess Washington is missing a bunch of their front 7 today. And Zeke is certainly not healthy, but do you have any interest in Zeke?
Yeah, I don't understand the ownership projections on Zeke. Like, I think it makes him like a reasonably easy fade personally. Yeah. Like I think the reason to play him would be as leverage on Gibson. You're basically saying like Washington's going to fail and Zeke's going to have this big game. Everyone wants to play Gibson, except for the way that I'm looking at the ownership, like he's looking like the guy that everyone's going to play from Dallas. And if that's the case, like I want to play the Dallas passing game and fade Zeke, who has been a fullback for weeks now. I mean, I don't understand. I'm seeing some like reasonably high ownership projection on him, and I just don't understand it, honestly.
I think it sets up maybe this is a hot take or whatever. I think Pollard being out and Zeke basically having to play a very significant role is what will, I think they were already going to lean into the pass given this particular matchup today. They're typically very smart. That's one thing I like about Dallas is we can typically kind of predict by understanding what, right, against the Bucks, they threw at what 25% over expected or whatever it was. You know, they play the matchup and then they game plan around that particular matchup and what makes sense most of the time. I think we're going to lean into that a little bit more today. And I think, you know, they know Zeke isn't healthy too. They're not going to run Zeke 30 times. You know, he's carrying around his leg out there, but he still can pass protect. So let's just get back there. Let him stand there and help protect Dak and let Dak sling it around.
That's what he's going to do all game today. He's just going to pass protect.
7,700 for, you know, Kyle Juszczyk or whatever.
Exactly.
I do think I like, this was one of my favorite bets. This take that we kind of have on this game is one of my favorite bets. Like just about anything related to the Dallas passing game, I think it's easiest to focus on Dak, whether it's like Dak passing yards. I actually really like Dak pass attempts because of that. This you know, if they're going to really attack this, you know, you get an average line basically every week, and you average out Dak's pass attempts per game, and they post a line, you know, somewhere around that number, and we can predict a little bit better than usual, like when they're gonna throw. So the Dak type stuff, you know, again, I'm using this to kind of pivot into some sports bets, but also pivot into our favorite kind of games to target. Some Dak props are some of my favorites. And as always, if you go to BetMGM and use promo code GRINDERSBET, they do have this. This is a pretty damn cool promo. All you got to do is bet $10. Right. And this is also why I love betting it on the Cowboys. All you need is that team to score a touchdown. You bet $10 on any one of these bets and you get $200 free. It's like, guess what? Spoiler, the Cowboys are going to score a touchdown today. So you bet $10 on like one of these Dak props and you're going to get $200 for free. So let's start on that game. Let's move away from running back because I don't want to talk about any more of these crappy running backs. I know you've talked about like Lamar Jackson and stuff in the offseason. I'm not playing any of these Lions guys without that. I understand in an MME team, if you want to do that, sure. But let's move on to some of these games. Let's start with that Dallas. We kind of summed that up at all. Do you have anything you want to add? Particularly, like how are you wading through the Dallas wide receivers in terms of like a hierarchy? And then like as a bring back, are you okay using Gibson? Do you prefer McLaurin or how are you treating that?
Yeah, I think it's actually like really straightforward. I'm going to be playing it a lot because it is one that I think is relatively easy to make the decisions on, especially with the projected, you know, field exposures across the game. I think Gibson's a really good play. I said that I don't necessarily want to full fade him. When I play him, it makes it easier to get him in when I'm correlating him with Dallas. You know, obviously scenarios where he's smashing, it gives, you know, it elevates the Dak ceiling and stuff. But the way that I want to play this game, pretty simple. Dak doubles. CD, I think, because he's a little more expensive, comes in too low, has the clear ceiling over Amari, especially since we don't necessarily know if Amari is like fully all the way back from this, like, you know, kind of longer COVID thing. I do want to play Amari in some of these too. Those are the top two pretty clearly for me. The way that I've seen it, it's not always like super clear in the data because all three receivers haven't been healthy at the same time, but Dalton Schultz has fallen off a little bit in the scenarios where all three receivers have been healthy. Just like some of this has been like in game and stuff like early in week one. And then Schultz has been in a better spot, I think, when he has been the clear third, at least in the passing game. Then he gets some targets. I like Gallup more than him in terms of like pure ceiling. Schultz obviously checks off the tight end box, so you can definitely stack him too. But for me, it's like CD and then either Amari or Gallup. And then you bring back, there's really only two guys you can bring back with, in my opinion. It's Gibson and you're kind of eating the chalk there. Then you have to be a little more contrarian the rest of your lineup. Or if you need this to be more contrarian, then you bring it back with McLaurin and you can eat chalk elsewhere. And then you can play Jeff Wilson if you want to.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. Are you playing doubles on all of your Dak stacks? Or are you playing just like a Dak to CD?
I mean, I think that's interesting
as well.
To just play CD and free up some wide receiver spots, especially like if you're playing McLaurin. I right now I have it as doubles, but I think you could play the singles.
Yeah, I'll keep going back and forth on that, just because like I do think if CD were a little bit cheaper, it would be it would be just like an auto smash, right? Like give me like if they're like both 6K or something like that, but just given we're definitely going to get to some of these other wide receivers, particularly in these games that you brought up already. But like, man, there's just so many guys from like, I'm going to call it 5,400, maybe 5K, 5,400. There's a couple guys at 5,400 that stick out in my mind, up to the CDs and Diggs and all those guys, that there's just so many that I keep going back and forth on. Like, yes, I naturally want the Dak double, but I'm like, gosh, guys are going to smash in this this tier. So I think you can do both for sure. What was the other game? Let's leave the 49ers game for the
Buffalo
third one.
Tampa.
Oh, we got to talk about Buffalo Tampa. Yeah. How are you? This is one that is very interesting because there's two things to it. It's very expensive, and it's also going to be like not crazy owned, but owned, right? You're not sneaking this game by anybody. How are you building your stacks of this game? Are you focusing like on Josh Allen's side versus Brady? And then same thing, are you like double stacking, or like how are you kind of going about putting these teams together?
Well, this is sort of why I'm gravitating more towards some of the Dallas stacks. I think it is challenging to build this game at the same time. Like, I actually don't love this slate. We've had a couple slates like this where there's one clear game, and a few times it has failed. And I've actually not had a hard time pivoting off it. Typically, like, this is my approach where it's like, I want to find the second game that I like them, and get way lower ownership across the board. And it's the second potentially exciting game. Go play that game. But this Buffalo Tampa game is so hard to see failing. Both of these teams, massive pass rate over expected teams. They're going to throw. Even when they can't run, they still throw. I mean, especially Buffalo. Tampa has run a little bit at times, but they're going to throw. Massive team over under, way higher than any other game on the slate. It's going to be a game with points, right? I mean, I don't know how you completely fade this game and see it failing, because when teams throw this much, incompletion, stop the clock and everything, even if they're struggling, it adds possessions at the back end of the game. They get more chances. Like you now have to dodge like 13, 14 possessions worth of failure if they're going 3 and out or whatever. I mean, these are good defenses, but it's like the game's going to have a lot of plays at that point. So anyway, I'm having a hard time with it. It's expensive, right? Yeah. I think on the Tampa side, we're going to see Fournette and Godwin be the chalkiest. Then Mike Evans. I'm gravitating a little bit towards Gronk, who's looking like he might come in a little bit under-owned. He's, checks off the tight end box. We know he has multi-TD potential in a way that could really kind of limit the upside of the other guys. I don't know if I love that. Allen Diggs is, a fun way to play it that's a little bit more expensive. I think Diggs is the obvious one. Those guys are going to be a little bit more chalky in the Buffalo side, although they're not projecting, like the whole Buffalo side is not projecting for a ton of ownership. I mean, this game is kind of getting going a little bit under the radar because it is so expensive. And so that makes me want to get over to it. But there's options, right? Like, do we trust Cole Beasley? He's looking like he's projected for a little bit of ownership. I don't really want to play him at ownership. I'd rather go over to Manny, who's probably more expensive than he should be, but his past 4 games are his 4 single lowest ADOTs of the year. He's basically up through week 9, had consistently solid air yards every week. And then now he's had 4 games in a row where the air yards haven't been there. Are we certain that Manny can't get a couple deep shots now? Because is that a trend, or is that just a month of games where the teams have sort of taken that away and they haven't been able to get downfield to him? Because if Manny has another 2 touchdown game like he did a couple of times in the first month of the season, even though he's probably a little more expensive than he should be, he makes a lot of sense here. Like a Manny Gronk, mini is a way to play this, to get exposure to both sides and be like, okay, well, if they both score 2 touchdowns, then I'm at least eating up some of the scoring in this game, right? I don't know. This is a tough one for me, but I'm looking at some of those types of pieces. Yeah,
it's so funny because it's very tough for me too, both because like I both love and hate every single one of the options on both sides for various different reasons, right? It's like, obviously, how do you not love Stephon Diggs? But it's like, God, he's 8,100 and there's all these other cheaper wide receivers, right? And then you have his teammates and it's like, well, I don't really feel that comfortable clicking, and I do want to point your point on Cole Beasley is like so true to me. I mean, I don't know how like we get attached as a community, as a fantasy football community, to like these random guys every single week. But I keep seeing, again, maybe my bubble, people are like, oh, it's Cole Beasley week, or like everyone's posting all these stats. Like, you know, this is the game that everybody's excited for. It's like Cole Beasley against zone coverage, right? Or he's your cheap way to get access to this game. And like somebody's like, it's Cole Beasley week. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I mean, I like Cole Beasley fine too, but like he's getting this ownership kind of that almost seems to be inflated. And so, like you say, I really struggle to go to Cole Beasley if I don't think he's like, you know, a contrarian way to attack this game. I also think he's the go-to. Like if you're playing Allen Diggs and you want to double that, they're going to play Cole Beasley. They're not going to play no one's going to play Manny Sanders. No one's going to play Dawson Knox, you know? So I both love this game and hate this game because it's really hard to build the stacks you would truly want of this game. And then, like you said, getting the exposure is like, do I play Manny Sanders Gronk? You know, how many points am I giving up doing that? You know, it has the upside.
Give it up a lot. Like it's not like a great play. It's just like the stuff I'm thinking.
But it does have the ownership, right? If this game goes how we think it's going to go, like Manny Sanders has proven he can catch a couple of, like Manny Sanders can have the 102 game that we're looking for. That is like, if he's 500 overpriced, it doesn't matter if he has 100 yards and a touchdown or whatever. Like those dollars didn't matter. Same thing. If Gronk scores 2 touchdowns, like who cares? I want him on my team. And so that balancing act is the most difficult part about this slate for me. It's like, I know this game is a smash, but how do I do it and make teams that I think are really good?
How are you? I mean, how are you playing?
What I've been doing is kind of stacking this game without the quarterback and using that to be able to get whether it's I haven't like landed on exactly things that I love because I don't really want to play Taysom. That's my biggest issue is like I think other people might actually do that. Plus, I think you're kind of like cutting off your nose to spite your face with Taysom specifically. But I think you could do it with Taysom. Perfect segue into it's kind of leading me into this other game that you mentioned because Joe Burrow is 6,000 and I really like the spot for Joe Burrow today and I really like the spot for his pass catchers. I think we might actually see them up the pass rate as well today, which is something we've been hoping for all year. And he is just cheap enough that can help me get kind of the pieces and everything I want here. And I feel totally comfortable like single stacking him with one of those wide receivers. Like we'll get to the hot takes, but explain to me how one of Jamar Chase or T Higgins doesn't like have a big game today.
Every week, one of them is going to have a big game. It's like, I mean, Jamar Chase was my flag plant last week, dropped the 70-yard TD, and Higgins went on to have the Chase game that I was projecting. That was super fun. Had him in 100% of my lineups. Stoked about that. I mean, my take on Cincinnati is you can just go right back to Jamar Chase, and you can also play Higgins. Like he's obviously coming on. We talked about him as sort of like a buy low throughout most of the season, more in like the seasonal community. We're seeing it now, right? And he has over 100 air yards in 5 of his last 6 games. It wasn't translating to points. It has the last 2 weeks. He looks good. He looks healthier now. Like this is why everyone was excited about Higgins, like in August. Can certainly play him. He might legitimately be the number 1 over Chase now, which like early season, it seemed, the other way. They're both really good. They both have ceilings. But Higgins is still cheaper, and that's, potentially wrong. Higgins is very good too. San Fran side, we have Wilson, right? I saw someone say they're playing hasty. That's a large field tournament thing, but I think you could potentially do that. Kittle is a really interesting play, like paying back up for tight end the week after that worked and no one wants to do it again. I think makes sense. Or, he's not projecting for as much ownership as you'd think coming off a 40-point game. And, Debo is back. And I think you could even play Debo as sort of a contrarian play. It's very expensive, but like the ceiling justifies it, in my opinion. You go, he's going to play 90% of the snaps. He's actually healthier than we all thought, and everyone misses on it.
100%.
There's several ways to play San Fran. I think San Fran's offense is playing well enough right now. They're humming. They're gonna score points probably. I like this game to shoot out. Cincy's defense is a little bit suspect. Their strength of schedule hasn't been great. It's in Cincinnati. I expect San Fran to score, push Cincy. One of the things I like about this close line, we don't necessarily know who's going to win with Cincy at home. If this was in San Fran, maybe it'd feel more like San Fran could run away with it and run the ball. But in Cincinnati, you kind of hope you get this back and forth environment. Both offenses kind of shoot out. I don't know. It looks like one that could definitely get going from a pace perspective. Burrow's a little tougher for me because like they want to run too. And like,
Mhm.
you can see this game getting slower if both teams
Oh,
want
yeah.
to run. Burrow's thrown a lot of touchdowns this year. His TD rate's been strong. Hasn't really had a ton of ceiling games. You know, he's only had like the one where he threw for well over 300 yards, or I guess I'm looking at his box score now, 2 where he's thrown for well over 300 yards. It's tough when they get ahead. They like to run. I'm a little concerned about because he doesn't add a lot as a rusher, what his real ceiling is, especially when you compare it to like guys like Taysom on this slate. And you're talking about like from a salary perspective, he's basically direct leverage. Can he, like, how many times has he beat Taysom? Because Taysom is going to put up yards one way or another. Like he's going to go run or throw or whatever.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know what I would put that number at, but I think what Burrow is to me today is it's a dollar store version of the Cowboys. You have to make an assumption of rational coaching. Like they're not going to be able to run San Francisco out of this game. Joe Mixon is not going to line up and run the ball 30 times and that's just not how you beat this team. This 49ers team, particularly when you combine, so maybe I'm getting 2 hand in the dirt. We're on practice squad corners now. And I also watched that game the only team that was able to revive Russell Wilson in the Seahawks passing game was these guys that are going to go play out there against Jamar Chase and T Higgins. And so you have to take a leap, right? Because they have not shown a willingness to do this. We have to take the leap that they're going to go out and they're going to attack the 49ers weakness with their best 2 players. Like if the stars are aligned, right? Go throw the ball to Jamar Chase and T Higgins against some guys who are basically not NFL players playing cornerback. That's what I would do. I think that's what a lot of people would do, but I can't guarantee that they're going to do that. So it's kind of like that leap. Like I want to stack the Cowboys because this is what the Cowboys I think should do in this game, right? Spoiler, throw it to CD, throw it to Amari, throw it to Gallup. Not that hard to see coming, but you need a little bit of kind of help basically in that. And then obviously you also need the 49ers to keep pace. In particular, why I like this game is because Jeff Wilson is going to be popular in a way that, even if you like, I really, really like Kittle, like you said, and he's an awesome option to me today. Also like Debo, for everything that you just said, everybody's not going to play him, right? Even though he's been like the second best fantasy asset at wide receiver in the league. And like, if this game goes how I'm talking about it, how we're talking about it, like Jeff Wilson becomes like irrelevant, right? Like if the Bengals are coming out chucking, maybe they're hitting some big plays. The 49ers got to keep pace. Maybe Kittle hits another one of those big plays. It's like Jeff Wilson, everybody that's playing Jeff Wilson, even on Fanduel, where he's like, a much stronger play at that price and that format. Those guys are getting left in the dust. So I think it's a fun game.
This is sort of why I brought up the Gibson McLaurin point, because I was already thinking about it for this game actually, which was, if Debo hits, if Kittle hits, I think that brings along Jeff Wilson at a low ownership. I think you can play this game as like even a mini stack with Wilson, Debo Chase or Wilson Kittle Chase. And you're saying exactly what you just said, but also that it brings along Jeff Wilson at his low salary and it frees up. Like you're playing this game to blow up. Yeah. Jeff Wilson at 4,400. Now I want Jeff Wilson at 4,400. The way I'm looking at it, it frees up salary. It over correlates in a way that other people might not be doing. That's one that I thought was kind of interesting to like pair. If you're going to play Debo or Kittle, to actually, I think that ups the play for Jeff Wilson. I think it increases his projection in a way that you're playing this game. You're playing San Fran to score. You're playing this game to shoot out, and you're playing Wilson or Hasty, but you're probably playing one of these really cheap 49ers running backs to hit value and to be the right sort of salary saving play in that lineup, right? I mean, that's how I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fine. I think Wilson can be a tricky one at times because, like I said, we don't really have a great feel for he could come out and play like every snap today. He could catch some balls, right? You talked about he should have had a receiving touchdown the last time that he started. He could come out, and I could be totally wrong about the fragility of and actually I don't want to say wrong about the fragility of his role, but his role could just be incredible. And in that sense, like if there's points being scored in this game and he has this amazing role, yeah, I want him. On the other sense, it's like, okay, if this game is like shooting out, maybe they fall behind, right? Maybe, Bengals get up by 14 points or something, which I also really like the Bengals to win this game. I think that's I think the analytics and, like you go to Football Outsiders and stuff, everybody loves the 49ers because of the way that they play and they're so efficient and all of that. And I'm not really buying it. I think this is a pretty bad spot for them. So I actually really like the Bengals today. And so like, if I'm right about that and they get up 10, 14 points or something like that, it's like either going to be really, really good for Jeff Wilson because the Niners are going to speed up, they're going to throw more, it's going to shoot out, or it's going to be really, really bad because it's going to be like check hasty Debo back there in the backfield. So it's a really interesting one. But I think this game, I'm glad we talked about this game because I think there's a lot of leverage available to you in this game, whether it's, fading Jeff Wilson or whether it's, kind of stacking this game up. And it's one example, right? It's other people probably have different games maybe that they love. But this one is one that just like really jumps out to me, and it makes so much sense on both sides, which is like, that's always terrifying. Like,
yeah, I mean,
it lines up.
The later we get into the year, like we've talked about this a lot though, like build smart lineups, correlate your lineups intelligently. I mean, we're typically, I know I'm typically playing a little bit smaller field stuff. And so I'm trying to correlate it, like kind of get the things that I need to get right, like minimize the number of things I need to get right, all of those things. This is a slate to me, like Buffalo Tampa Bay clearly shines above all in terms of games. The rest of the games I think can all fail basically. And so when I'm looking at situations like this, San Francisco, Cincinnati one, part of it for me is like throwing Jeff Wilson in on top of a little mini correlation of like one of the, Kittle and Higgins or whatever. I'm playing that game to not fail. And so like, I just want to like simplify my lineup in that way. He's a cheap play. He's a reasonable play. It's maybe dumb, but it's just like, it's making things simpler for the way that I'm building. And I think that's a big thing about this game is like pick your games that you want to be in on. I don't think this is going to be a slate like last week where there's a lot of scoring basically. And you can have, this mix and match lineup from all over different places. Obviously, if you pick everything right, you can do that, but it's hard to do that, to just pick one-offs from every game. There's going to be some games that fail on this slate for sure. I mentioned the Chargers one being one I think goes under. That can hit, and we talked about ways it could, but there's going to be games on the slate that fail for sure.
No doubt. I couldn't agree more with, especially like for smaller field stuff, like the overstacking thing. And I think particularly on FanDuel, because like you said, I'm just looking for the game that doesn't fail and like, just give me the scoring from that game. Right. And then when you get some cheap pieces, right, obviously Jeff Wilson is cheap, the quarterbacks are cheap, whatever, like I just want all the touch. I just want to find the game that scores a lot of points. I'm probably going to get a lot of the touchdowns, especially in this game, it's really condensed on both sides. Like there's only 3 or 4 guys you can even play on each team on their offense. And so I really like that approach. I agree. One other game, so we're going to wrap up here in just a second. If we didn't hit any of your questions, any of the games you like, I apologize. I think it was important to hit a couple of these games pretty deeply. The crunch time guys will be coming in about 10 or so minutes after us, and they'll hit all your questions, anything that we didn't get to cover today. And so like you said, I feel the same way about a lot of these games. One game that is like really fascinating to me, not because I expect it to blow up, it's actually quite the opposite, but we get a situation similar to San Fran and Cincinnati where it's so condensed on both sides of the Ravens-Browns game. So, I kind of think this is like, if I were putting my money on the under or the over, I think I would bet the under, but it's also really interesting to me for tournaments because, Lamar basically throws to 2 dudes and we know what Lamar can do as a runner.
Yep.
The Browns are missing, like all their tight ends are gone. Odell is gone. So you have Landry and I guess DPJ, if you really want to get, crazy as a punt guy and the running backs. Sure.
The running backs. Yeah.
Yep. And so there's only a handful of guys on each side that you can play. And so it's one of those where it's like, if this does score a little bit more than we think, right, it doesn't need to have 60 points, but if it scores a little bit more than we think, I know where the points are going.
Yeah, I like
between those two teams. So that's one that I do like as well. And I mean, Hollywood and like probably DPJ and Chubb, they can hit home runs that speed up a game like we talked about with Saquon or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, some of these AFC North games have gotten high scoring. I mean, they definitely know each other, and that can make for lower scoring games. Second divisional game they just played a couple weeks ago, had all those turnovers and everything, but it's certainly that it can shoot out. That is basically all I'm saying. Like this is going to be a competitive game. There's a lot riding on it. It can definitely shoot out.
Yep. So there's one only because I tweeted about this and the people seem to love this player, and I want to hit this before we dive in. So Julio Jones, I feel like deserves to be mentioned on a tournament show. He's playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's back, obviously. AJ Brown is not back. Derrick Henry is not back, and he's 5,400 on DraftKings. We had him projected to super low ownership. I think he's going to come in at kind of like reasonable. not anything super chalky because
I
people
just don't
feel that
want to
comfortable.
correlate anything on the Jaguars back. And so it's almost like I just would rather play that to fail. But I think he's a great tournament play. Like when I'm talking about over correlating, like I don't want to just one off a Titans Jaguars game player, but the Titans are probably going to have someone score some points here. So I do agree with you.
You would think.
Yeah.
So he was the guy I wanted to bring up just
for sure
on a GPP show. Julio Jones without all those guys at 5,400 and not chalk. I was like, I don't know what to. I really because I feel the same way as you. It's like that game is gross. If I just one off a Titans wide receiver, I don't know about that, but I think he warrants some exposure for sure if you're building a bunch of lineups today. So I'm going to kick it to you first. We always wrap up. If you haven't watched before, we always wrap up with kind of like a hot take, a conviction play. They have been some of the biggest hits of the year and some of the biggest whiffs.
Some of the biggest drop touchdowns of the year.
Yes, exactly. So I can assure you it's probably going to be a fun ride either way, no matter which way it goes, depending on how much you love Jamar Chase catch. He also caught that ball and like threw it backwards. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable to watch.
So I'll just take the Dak double with the Gibson bring back is a smash. Basically, I do think Gibson is like almost too big to fail. You can definitely get off of him, but he's the chalk that I want to eat this week, and so I think that Dak double with Gibson is sort of my conviction play. We're calling it. We're like week 15. We haven't even figured out what to name anything.
Yeah, we got to change the names after each failure. We don't want to keep calling it the same. Like I think I conviction like. Oh, some of the ones are so bad, like we've done KJ Hamler, I think I did Zach Wilson in the Texans game, but then there have been some really, really, really good ones. So
Zach Wilson and Elijah Moore last week, it was a touchdown in the first quarter. I mean, we were just a week late.
What a troll that was. So mine, maybe people would call this like a little bit of a cop out, but I really do believe so strongly in those two Bengals wide receivers. I'm actually making a few more teams today than I normally would. And my current plan is I want to have one of T. Higgins or Jamar Chase in every single one of those teams. I really do believe that it's like a lock that one of those guys is going to smash. I don't really feel, like I said, that comfortable picking out which one it is, but I feel really, really strongly about the Bengals being a smart enough team to go at the weakness of the 49ers with those two guys. And so I think that they're just a total smash today. So, all right, we got to wrap up. That is week 14. I know it's like championship round of some certain season long formats. It's the end of best ball regular season. It's Fanduel live final, which I think we got Squirrel Patrol, Cal, all kinds of people from RG out there. So good luck to them. And then of course, good luck in your tournaments. And Ben and I will see you next week in week 15.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, Rotogrinders NFL Crunch Time. The season is surely flying by, and it's great to be here every step of the way with you. I'm Justin Carlucci alongside of Kristi Metzger. What's going on, Kristi? How are you?
Hey, doing great. I know you're just talking about how the season's kind of winding down on us. And yeah, it's been great doing all these shows with you and look forward again to breaking it down with you guys.
Okay, Devin's producing as well. And Mr. Tuttle, Dan Gaspar, is here. You know, he's stealthy today. I don't know if you can see him, but you'll be able to hear him. So turn that volume up. Tuttle, come in. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hope you guys can hear me. I hope the audio is not too bad. Dealing with technical issues. But I'm here, so hopefully we can get through the show all right, and hopefully we have a good Sunday.
That Marcus Johnson take a month ago was so hot. I think it just started slowly, like melting your computer or whatever you had, but it hit, so it was worth it. But I'm interested to hear some of your guys' takes on a lot of high ownership, some news we don't actually have with Javonte Williams. I mean, we have a speculation or two, and of course some really potentially good game environments where it might make sense to game stack maybe this week more than some other weeks. Some quick housekeeping stuff. We'll get it out of the way. The DFS OGs League. If you're playing on Fanduel this week, sign up for the DFS OGs Fanduel contest for week 14. Compete against our guys like Beard, Chop, and Noto. That link is fanduel.com/OGs show. BetMGM, I've been plugging them all year and I will continue to do so. The bonus code on BetMGM is GRINDERSBET. That's GRINDERSBET. Bet $10 to get $200 instantly when your team scores a touchdown. Of course, on Yahoo, the promo code on Yahoo, if you want to do some stuff on Yahoo, is Grinders25 with a capital G. Grinders25 with a capital G for a free $25 bonus on your first deposit. Join the 50K free roll, 5K to first on Yahoo, and we have lineup HQ for it as well. And we got Kirk Dees, our kid Yahoo guy over there, who's been absolutely smashing Yahoo for a couple seasons now. So we do have some Yahoo content, and of course RG Premium, where you can get a lot of premium written stuff, audio, video, the whole nine we have here at Rotogrinders. And I'm assuming most of you are probably with premium by now to get all of our great features. And if you're not, you definitely should check it out. Anyway, a lot of stuff to break down here. It's about 12:35 Eastern. Maybe we could kind of not fly through the positional breakdown, but I think it's going to be a really good week for projections or well, let's hope it is. I meant questions. It's going to be a good week to take some questions. And big shout out to our projections team. Jamino took down a big NBA tournament this week. So there's your validation, everybody. The projections are good with what we do here. Anyway, it's going to be a good week for questions. So let's talk about quarterbacks. Kristi, I'll throw it over to you first. What do you got going on today?
Yeah, so I think at the top, when you're looking at like the cash game plays and some of the optimal plays, I think, Josh Allen, Mahomes, and Brady are going to pop up there for the top. I think those are, good quarterbacks to look at, especially on FanDuel. I think Taysom Hill definitely enters the conversation, especially on DK because of his price and his rushing upside. So for cash, I like Taysom quite a bit on DK. And for me, I like Allen quite a bit for FanDuel for cash lineups. To get a little bit different, I love Mahomes a ton this week. He's let me down more this year than he's been good for me, but I do think this is a great matchup. He performed extremely well against the Raiders last time out. I think he had 36 fantasy points. So great game environment there. Brady on the other side, love that. I love Brady and Allen, think they're both great plays today. That should be one of the best games to target this week. So love that a lot. Also love Dak Prescott a lot. He's got all of his weapons back. We do see Pollard is out. So Zeke will be the only running back there, but he's got all his guys, Cooper, Lamb, Schultz, Gallup. So like that spot for him a ton. Herbert too. I think you could, certainly put him in the cash conversation as well. Although I kind of view him more as a tournament guy. And then just a couple of guys for tournaments that I really love, and you're going to be able to get them at low ownership. One is Russell Wilson, which is really scary because he has not done well. But if there's ever a get right matchup, this could be a great one against Houston at very, very low ownership. We have him at 5% ownership right now. And then the other one too, Joe Burrow. I mean, it just wouldn't be a week if we didn't mention him. Chase, we'll get to him at the receiver matchups, but just a nice spot for him. his price has really come down. So those are a couple guys I like on the GPP side.
Good stuff. Tuttle, we can hear you, buddy. Give us some hot takes if you have any.
Yeah, I'll go to the hot takes because Kristi mentioned most of the cash stuff. And cash, I think it's Josh Allen, FanDuel, Taysom Hill on DraftKings. Hot takes, like, I don't love this one, but Lamar Jackson is so cheap. So cheap. Or not cheap, so low owned. Kind of crazy. Like, I know he hasn't played well. I know the Baltimore offense in general has looked terrible. There has been talk about them kind of trying to speed things up, go a little bit no huddle. I know it's not the perfect game environment, things like that, but still, there aren't many times where you can get a guy that has legitimate 40-point upside at 3% ownership, and you're getting that this week. So it's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but I do think Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown are solid stacking candidates. And then DPJ on the other side, Donovan Peoples-Jones is really cheap on DraftKings. So I do like that for tournaments in terms of stacking. I don't have anything too hot other than that. I do think Dak will kind of be the popular double stack, or the popular non-Josh Allen, non-Tom Brady stack. I like it. I think it's strong. I guess my hottest take probably this week is that I don't like Justin Herbert that much, and at least as much as the field. I'm a little bit more concerned, or I don't think anybody has any sort of concern that the offense might struggle a tiny bit, at least with Keenan Allen out. And I think that's certainly within the range of outcomes that people aren't accounting for. People are kind of just piling up to, play some of the cheap receivers and Jared Cook and Mike Williams in the spot. But Allen is such a crazy dynamic to their offense, and it's not really replicable. So I do wonder if perhaps Herbert struggles a little bit this week. So I do think Herbert's a decent tournament fade. So not really a recommendation, but I guess my hottest take is probably a Herbert fade.
I had the same thoughts, and I was wondering if I was crazy, and I'm glad you kind of valid. Maybe we're both crazy. I don't know. But like Allen is demands a huge chunk of the target share and the air yard market share. Guyton's a deep threat. Let's be real. Mike Williams kind of disappeared after the first 4 weeks of the season for whatever reason. Now he's thrusted into this volume role. Like, is he going to be able to produce? I don't know. And like, at this point, other than just being on the field, what does Jared Cook bring to the table? He's serviceable, but you're absolutely right. I think if anything, it's kind of screaming as like an Austin Eckler, maybe more, maybe flank him out a little bit more game. And I guess we could segue into running backs. Do you have anything else to add, Tuttle, or should we head on the running backs?
No, we can do running backs.
Yeah, I mentioned Austin Eckler, and he's towards the top on FanDuel in terms of price, Kristi. So this is where it gets interesting. As usual, you can really differentiate yourself here at the running back position. So talk to me. What are you looking at on top here, and who do you like for value, if there is any?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think Antonio Gibson jumped to the top of the list when we heard McKissick is out. So I think he's going to be one of the higher owned plays today for running back. And I think he's really good chalk. I mean, without McKissick in there, we saw what he did last week. So I like that play a ton. Jeff Wilson is obviously popping up there for value play of the week. And, he's just priced so cheaply that it was kind of like Sony Michel the other week, where just a good spot to get some value in there. So he's certainly popping up there too. I think Eckler was maybe a little bit more popular early on before we got the McKissick news, but still a very, very good play. Like Eckler a ton, just like you guys mentioned. Fournette, I think, is another great play. And I think he's in our top 3 for running back projected ownership. He's just been getting a ton of runs, and, even if they do pass a lot in that game, I still see Fournette getting there. Zeke now is really kind of entering the conversation too. And boy, his price has really come down. No Pollard this week. So, just based on volume alone, should have a good opportunity. 6,900 on FanDuel, 73, I believe, on DraftKings. So I like that price point for him. I think Josh Jacobs is great too. I mean, he doesn't have anybody competing for touches, so his price is great. I like that game in Kansas City quite a bit, and he's a good bring back there. Javonte Williams, like him, even if Gordon is going to be in, I like him no matter what. I just think he's a very talented player and a lot of potential, still a great price point there as well. Another guy that I have interest in too, I don't think he'll be extremely popular, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire, If we look at that matchup, he didn't play when they played Vegas last time. Williams did, but I think he put up 26 fantasy points. So it's a great opportunity for him. Even if Williams steals some touches, at his price point, I like him a ton. I wish I, felt better about Barkley and knowing if he is 100%, which I know he isn't, because he sure would make a great, play to come back against the Chargers there. But I'm certainly lower on him, but you could certainly take a stab at him as well. I think those are the guys that I kind of like the most. I think Gibson's definitely my favorite, and I think he's really the guy. He and Wilson are a couple of cash game plays that looking at getting in my cash lineups today.
All right, Tuttle, over to you.
Yeah, Kristi did a good job. I think Wilson is interesting for tournaments on DraftKings. I think on FanDuel you kind of just play him. He's only 4,900. Like he opens up so much construction on FanDuel specifically that you play him. DraftKings is a little bit of a different story. He doesn't project much as a pass catcher. He's probably going to get the early down work. So I do think if you get a game where Wilson doesn't score a touchdown, you could pretty easily be looking at single digit fantasy points. Again, I don't really care about that on FanDuel because he's so cheap and opens up so much. But on DraftKings, that could actually sink you. So I do think Wilson's kind of an interesting game theory fade on DraftKings specifically. Kristi mentioned one of my favorite tournament options on FanDuel is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Also similar price point, James Robinson, only 6,400. He's 5,800 on DraftKings. He's one of my favorite tournament plays at low single digit ownership. We've seen Jacksonville's a complete mess. And I usually don't put a whole lot of weight into narratives, but I do think we see an overcorrection. There's been so much talk about, James Robinson's the better back. Trevor Lawrence has said he wants James Robinson out there, basically not Carlos Hyde. So I do think we go see an overcorrection back to James Robinson in the spot. You could be looking at 20 plus touches for a guy that's really cheap. So Robinson's one of my favorite tournament options. Trying to think on the high end of things, you talked a little bit, Justin, about Eckler, and Kristi too, about him potentially being a little bit overlooked. Now, I do think if you think the offense struggles like I do, Eckler is the obvious guy to take on a lot larger passing role. So I do think he's a much better play on DraftKings than FanDuel. But I think that's about it for me.
Could this be a week where the target tree is so condensed between Eckler and Williams that they can survive in an optimal without Justin Herbert? Like, you don't need Herbert, but those guys should see so much volume. You think it could be fine to have one of those, even if they're chalky pieces,
100%. That's the case. They could 50% of the targets theoretically in a spot like this.
They could each have 10 targets today, and Herbert cannot be optimal, maybe, right? I don't know.
Yeah, pretty easily. I do want to say one thing too. I forgot about real quick. People are going to be playing Detroit Lions running backs. I think it's pretty clear to me which one you want, and that would be Godwin. I think Jamar Jefferson is going to be an early down grinder, and he is not going to be in any of the passing game work. And that's not really what you want for a team with a 15-point team total. As a guy that's just going to run between the tackles from 20 to 20. I think you could do worse things than play a Detroit running back, but I really don't want any part of Jamar Jefferson specifically.
Okay, that's fair. Let's go on to receivers. And it's about 12:46. We'll try to speed up and get to your questions soon, folks. Thanks for sticking with us. Wide receiver, Kristi. Obviously, all these quarterbacks we like have number one receivers carrying ownerships, and probably rightfully so. After that, I know you're a big Jamar Chase fan, as is most people are. They're getting a banged up San Fran secondary. I feel like I read something you wrote about Jamar Chase this week somewhere or something, but I just couldn't find it. So talk to me about the receiver group here in Jamar Chase.
Yeah, absolutely. I do like Jamar Chase. I know, like you said, they're missing some pieces. I think I wrote him up as a contrarian play. But yeah, I think Mike Williams is going to check in as the highest owned, and I think he's kind of the cash game play on both DraftKings and FanDuel. I just think he makes a lot of sense with Keenan Allen out. I know there's a lot of ways for that to fail, but I think for cash games, he's a good play there. Some other guys that are going to carry some good ownership. Stephon Diggs is right up there too. That Buffalo Tampa game is really popular. So Diggs and Godwin are going to carry a good amount of ownership. In tournaments, I actually like Mike Evans quite a bit more. He actually has the better matchup of the two. So I do like Evans to get away from the chalkier Godwin. Tyreek Hill, fantastic play. I like him a lot. He had a couple touchdowns. I think he had like 86 yards and a couple touchdowns against Vegas last time. And I know he's been complaining a little bit too about being involved more. So I think he's a fantastic play. I think you could use him in cash or tournaments. Another good cash game play too is Hunter Renfrow with Waller out again. He's going to be in that cash conversation again. Another guy that has emerged too, as you know, especially I think on FanDuel, he's 5,500. But Jamison Crowder, you know, with more out now, there's just so many targets that leaves behind. And, you know, I think Crowder just fits in and it allows you to spend up at tight end and get an extra running back or wide receiver piece. So like that play a ton. Jamar Chase, like you mentioned, probably my favorite tournament play on the week. His price has really come down. I think both he and Higgins actually are fantastic plays. And, you know, you get some of those Cincinnati guys in, and then you can, you know, bring it back with Kittle and Jeff Wilson as well. So I think like those obviously a lot. A couple more tournament plays. I'll throw DK Metcalf in there. I mentioned I liked Wilson a lot for a tournament play, kind of an under the radar play. So definitely like him. And then guys like CeeDee Lamb are carrying very low ownership, even though we like that game a ton. There's a lot of ways to stack it, but you know, getting both Lamb and Cooper in there, I think are really, really great plays and ones that I like a lot. And then like, if you're looking to really save some money too, you know, you could look at maybe some of those other, you know, like Jalen Guyton or some of those guys, but not something that I'm planning on doing. I think, yeah, Palmer, I think is the other cheap one. So there's a couple of cheap guys in that Chargers game that you could look to if you wanted to, but those are kind of the guys that I guess I'm focusing on the most.
Good stuff. All right, Tuttle, it's on you.
Yeah, not a whole lot to add from a cash game perspective. I think if you're trying to dissect the Chargers cheap wideout situation, my preference is Joshua Palmer over Jalen Guyton. We've kind of seen Guyton before start at receiver for the last couple of years over the Chargers and just not do a whole lot. Yeah, he can catch a deep ball. He can score a touchdown on a deep ball, but he's not going to be the guy that has any chance of replicating the Keenan Allen role. Like we said, I think if anyone has a chance, it's Palmer doing that. I wouldn't expect it for him to actually do that. But I think Palmer's got the higher floor and potentially higher ceiling as well. Trying to think the kind of like the 4-6 to 6K range on DraftKings is kind of tough to navigate. Sterling Shepard's there. I think he's back healthy-ish. He's seen a lot of targets when he's been on the field, and it kind of sets up for that again this week. Julio Jones is another interesting option at 5,400. I mean, you look at one, like if you're just sorting by implied team totals, Tennessee has one of the highest implied team totals today, and there's not really a good way to get exposure to them. I'm personally scared of getting exposure via Julio Jones, who's always injured, but I think on paper it makes a ton of sense, and I would not be surprised if he had a good game. So I think Julio Jones makes a lot of sense for tournaments for sure.
Especially without the alpha receiver active in Marcus Johnson in Tennessee, Julio should garner some more looks. So, but yeah, no, I agree. And it's not, trust me, as a Titans fan, it's not comfortable rolling out Julio or Deonta Foreman, but you know, the Titans want to run the ball, and who am I not to say Foreman's going to dump it in twice? It's very possible. All right, we'll save some time here. 12:51 tight ends. Kristi, give me like your favorite option or two at the top, and then maybe someone a little lower you're looking at tight end.
At the top, I'm definitely looking at Kelsey, Gronk, and Kittle are probably my favorites at the top that I'm looking at. And then at the bottom, to save money, I think Austin Hooper, you know, they're missing Njoku, and so I like him a lot. He's emerged a little bit. I think Everett has gotten some targets, so I certainly think he's in there. And then O'Shaughnessy, I think at the bottom too, is certainly an interesting play to save some money.
Okay, I'm going to quick throw in my favorite contrarian play in case Tuttle was going to steal it. I have a lot of Dawson Knox, an uncomfortable amount, let's just say. Terrible week, looking for a rebound. Tampa Bay, you know, according to Gridiron IQ, actually yields some points to tight ends. And I think it's a low-owned way to get some exposure to this game. Tuttle, over to you for tight end.
Yeah, Knox is a really good play. So I like that call. If you're looking for cheap play, that won't be owned, Ricky Seals-Jones. There's not a lot of news surrounding him and his status. He is active, obviously. If he's not limited, this is an excellent spot for him, especially on FanDuel. He's only $4,500 on FanDuel. DK kept him up at 36, so he's just kind of an okay option there. But I think RSJ is my favorite sneaky option on FanDuel at tight end.
I forgot about him. That's a great play. That's a really good point.
Okay. Let's go take some questions as I am hitting the rebuild on my optimizer here for like the 10th time in the show because I keep finding things I want to tweak. Getting a lot of scary Terry, which could be good leverage off Gibson, by the way. And it is scary playing Terry. So he finally had the nickname, you know, it warrants what's going on. All right, let me just scroll up past all this holiday cheer in the chat here and find the top question. All right. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. All right. Love the Wilson Lockett combo today. Yeah. Texans are not good. Agreed. I like the Seahawks a little bit for tournaments. Good morning. For cash, we'll start with you, Kristi. For cash, pick 2 between Kamara, Fournette, and Eckler on FanDuel.
Okay. Pick 2, Kamara, Fournette, and Eckler.
Yes.
I would go Eckler and Fournette.
Okay. Over to you, Tuttle. FanDuel single entry. Lamb, McLaurin, and 49ers defense. Or Debo, Jamar Chase, and Jets.
The Lamb McLaurin.
Okay. I'm scrolling down here. Hooper looks good for a tight end. Yeah, Kristi just mentioned. Agreed with Hooper. Which Lions RB are we playing? I think Tuttle. Do you want to touch on that situation just a little bit more? I know you mentioned it before.
I'm not even going to try to pronounce the last name, but Godwin is the guy that I would only take shots on. He is the pass catching back pretty clearly. Ran 26 routes compared to 2 routes, I believe it was, from Jefferson last week, and he's the guy on DraftKings specifically that I would play.
All right. Hey, Kristi, over to you. FanDuel cash, Taysom Hill or Lamar Jackson?
I'd actually go Taysom Hill.
Okay. And we'll give another FanDuel question over to you, Tuttle. CeeDee Lamb and Kansas City defense or Mike Williams and Broncos defense? I don't know if that's for cash or not because his previous question was cash.
Yeah, cash is definitely Mike and Broncos.
Okay. Kristi, FanDuel cash, straight up, Gibson or Fournette?
Gibson for cash.
Okay. Tuttle, Mixon, another slate breaking day. We had a statement in the chat. He broke my heart last week against the Chargers. What do you think about Joe Mixon in that game? Any interest?
I mean, if he's a full go, he's been sick all week. If he's a full go, he's 100% an awesome tournament play because he's going to see very little ownership.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned him once. I haven't heard many tout sites mention him or anybody across the industry. So I think Mixon is in a very interesting spot for large field GPPs as well. I don't have a lot of them. So if it burns me, it burns me. Let's see. Sorry if I missed anything. I'm scrolling through a bunch of garbage in the chat. Kristi, FanDuel single entry, best receiver under 7,300. And while I'll give you a minute to look at that, I'll go over to you, Tuttle, and ask you a question. For DraftKings cash, are you playing Javonte Williams or Josh Jacobs? And it might be worth mentioning a take on Javonte Williams, who doesn't play till 4:00 today.
Yeah, I think Jacobs. I think in general, Javonte is really hard to figure out this week. It seems like it's going to be a 50-50 split between Melvin Gordon and him. Whenever that is the case, it's pretty easy. You just fade, right? But it would not be surprising if Javonte got 15 plus touches still, even with a 50-50 split. I think Broncos are going to pretty clearly dominate time of possession and just possession in general. Like Detroit's not going to be able to move the ball. So Javonte, even if Melvin Gordon is active, I think is a pretty strong play.
Okay. Kristi, do you have a favorite receiver under 73 or under? I think it is.
Did you say on FanDuel?
I believe it's FanDuel. Let me just check it. Hold on. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say I'd actually just kind of looking at that. I mean, there's a couple I like, but I'd probably actually go Chase.
Yeah, Jamar Chase, strong option. I'm with you there. Okay. 10 minutes to log. Yeah, 12:57. Start wrapping up. Zeke. Okay, here we go for Tuttle. Zeke and Jacobs or Eckler and Beasley for DK cash.
Eckler Bees.
Eckler, Beasley. Okay. Kristi, Chargers defense and Landry. That's Jarvis, or Texans defense and Mike Evans.
I think I'd do the Chargers Landry.
Okay. DKGPP title is Josh Jacobs and CEH in the same lineup, a negative correlation. And would you suggest it or looking in a different direction?
I think it's fine. Jalen Richard's inactive. They don't have pass catching backs, so Jacobs is going to be the pass catching back. So he's relevant even playing from behind. So no, I do not think they negatively correlate.
Okay. We got an AJ Dillon question tonight. We'll get to you maybe after lock. Fanduel Cash, Kristi, Fanduel Cash, Hooper and Jets defense, or Gerald Everett and the Chiefs defense.
I think I'd take Everett and the Chiefs defense.
Okay. Then another question. Play Melvin and Javonte. I think we'll probably all endorse not to do that. Are you guys with me?
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't play both.
There's not upside playing together.
Here's the thing. I would not endorse it, but it has hit once this week in a Millie Maker lineup, and once this year. And if it was going to happen any other week, this would be the week.
True. I mean, at an onslaught, right? Like a total, look, I mean, it's terrible, apples to oranges here. The Titans lost, but Hillman and Forman both had 120 yards against the Patriots 2 weeks ago, right? So, I mean, it's unlikely, but it could be a thing, I guess you could say. About a minute, guys. Hit that save and submit button. All right. Yeah, make sure you get them in. Thanks for being active in the chat here, Devin. Devin, thanks for putting out fires here today and taking out some trash, I guess we could say. Don't skip my question. Oh, it's AJ Dillon. All right, man. We're 1 minute before lock. Just seeing if there's any main slate questions rolling in. I got you, B-Shot. Don't worry. Devin, give me your main slate take quick, and then we'll get to B-Shot after lineup lock here.
My main slate take, Buffalo, Tampa Bay underperforms. Cincinnati, San Fran overperforms.
Ooh, Jamar Chase season. Okay.
I'm actually going with Higgins over Chase, but we'll see.
Oh, the Devin special. Love it. I need to make some graphics for you for this show so we can get you on at the end here. Okay. All right, B-Shot, we got you. Tuttle, this one's for you. AJ Dillon, what are your thoughts on him tonight?
He's solid. It sets up perfectly for him. Cold game, huge spread. I can envision him milking away the clock in the second half right now. I don't know if you've looked at showdown pricing yet, but just egregious pricing by DraftKings has, I think Aaron Jones is 10.6 and then AJ Dillon's 4.4.
Oh.
So $6K gap between the two. I think it will be more in favor. Workload will be back more in favor of Aaron Jones after the bye week. He should be rested up. So I do think he's the number one back now, but there should not be that big of a gap between them in pricing.
And that is pretty bad. Yeah, that'll be fun. So I'm on the Showdown show with the Iceman tonight, and we have NBA Crunch Time in between. So busy Sundays here. Anything else, guys, or should we get out of here?
Yeah, better get watching some football, I think.
Go Titans.
All right. Well, thanks for sticking with us, chat. We appreciate 99.9% of you that have joined us today. And like Devin said, looks like we'll be moving to the Discord. Devin,
That's correct. Sure yeah. And I'll drop a link in chat here. We're going to be moving all the chat to Discord. So go ahead and hop in there if you're not in there already. And we'll find ourselves some chat there for the shows.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you guys. So for Devin, Dan, and Kristi, I'm Justin. Good luck. Let's make some money, everybody.